here.
I can't. My eyeballs are up here, and the tongue is down there.
Is it Ed, my eyes are up
down there.
My eyes are up here, Ed.
My eyes are up. Oh, down there.
Yeah, I've got a good friend who, when he's told that, says, "I've made my choice."
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. That's right. My eyes are up here, guys. Okay, remember that. All right. So we're live.
Oh, but Jeff.
Curry, can you monitor the Twitch for me?
I'm on.
Because if I have it on, it does nothing but echo on me.
Sure, I got you.
Echo.
Okay. Echo.
Echo.
Just let me know if it's actually playing.
It looks like it is.
All right, awesome. Well, welcome everybody to our first show back in about 8 months. So it's been a long, arduous 8 months. Let me tell you what, a lot of things have happened. We're back with we're going to be going over the halls of Eveningstar. Great suggestion by our local sage here of George Krashos. Thought it would be a great idea, especially with the with the recent passing of Ed's wife Jenny, and because she was the original Giselle, correct?
Yes.
Yes, she was the original Giselle in the home campaign, which was taken over by somebody else later on when Jenny got tired of Ed, and moved on to the other part of the house. Am I wrong, Ed? Am I wrong?
No, it wasn't that. She said, I have too much to do. I can't spend the time. You guys seriously spend 4, 5, 6 hours? We said, yes.
Yes.
She said, and there's nothing more important in your lives? And we said, no. And she said, well, somebody has to pay the bills, make the meals, make lunches for tomorrow, do the laundry. And I said, why? Why can't we just show up naked? It's a public library job, but And
then Jenny just goes, I'm out. Oh my God. So I do want to do something here. I was hoping Brian would be back, but he's not. But Ed, happy birthday.
Darling.
He's not, but Ed.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
darling.
I was 63 yesterday. So I just want you to know I'm not counting birthdays anymore.
That's okay. That's perfect. But we have to sing happy birthday to you.
Oh, no.
Oh, you got to let Steven in. You got to let Steven in, Jeff.
There's Steven. Do I have to? Okay.
Yeah.
You can add a 10 or 2 hour baseline.
For the singing portion of our program.
That's right. Our bass just came in, so let's take
Hello.
There he is.
Hey, Steven.
Yeah, and for some reason my video's not working. Let me try and see.
It looks
keep
perfect.
It like that. It's good.
It looks perfect. Yeah.
Stop video, start video. Why is it not turning on?
It's because your sequins are overwhelming it.
That's right.
You haven't pressed the swear at video button.
Yeah, that's me behind the candelabra indeed.
That's right. Well, I didn't think we could take pictures of vampires, so that's the reason why you're not.
I don't know what the heck is going on here.
Are you sure you haven't been attacked by drow?
And no,
just
I
a glow
haven't.
of darkness on
Okay,
you.
everybody,
let me drop out and come back in.
Everybody who's watching, this is what it looks like in the Underdark if you don't have infravision.
Also known as Australia, the land down under.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Then we'll all be talking dwarves. We'd all be talking like dwarves then.
Now. Let's be good. Some of us are smooth down under. Let's be good.
Well, there goes our PG rating. Ba-dum.
It only took 2 minutes.
It took 2 minutes to go.
Hey, that's a new record.
Yeah, whatever are you talking?
Definitely a new record.
And Ed, I'm still trying to convince my wife to come with me and Curry if Curry's coming up to see you in September. So.
It'll be a party. I will get out all the toys.
Woo!
Well, I'm gonna leave that alone. we're now broadcasting. I'm gonna leave it alone.
What do you mean expand my camera setting? What do you mean?
It looks like the bottom 2 in your Hollywood squares is cut off on Twitch.
Oh,
so...
it is. Holy crap. I can't expand it. Hold on. How do I do that? I can do that.
Don't mess it up. Don't mess it up.
It'll go. Give it a second.
Look
There's
at
a
you
delay.
doing things.
It's a delay, but I can do that. For some reason, it's cutting everybody off. Do I need to change my size?
Presses the button?
No, whatever you did, just fixed it. Everybody's in frame now.
Oh, okay, good.
There you go.
Sweet.
Jeff fixed his size just like that.
I did. It only took a few minutes and a little conjuring, and
He doesn't look that excited, but anyway.
And this is how things always are, folks. This is how game settings get designed since time immemorial.
I see. Do says, "Yay, the gang! Oh my God, the gang is back." Yes, we are. We are back, and we are. In case you haven't heard, we are going to eventually going over the haunted halls of Eveningstar.
So we're in the dungeon.
We're in the dungeon. That's right. So we're in the dungeon.
Suddenly.
In a world they
right.
never made.
But
Yeah.
They all talk like this, though.
Oh, God.
There we go.
No.
That didn't last long.
Y'all are
That
so-
didn't last long at all.
Y'all are so bad. Y'all are horrible.
Yes.
So everybody out there sing happy birthday to Ed. I can't hear you.
Oh, please no.
No. I meant
We'll
the
take the
people
the
watching.
thought for the deed,
I
okay?
thought we were going to do it in Gnomish.
That's right, we are. We represent the Holy Baptist. Isn't that gnomish?
Something like that.
Something like
Close.
that. Okay. Well, apparently Steven's having trouble, so we can go ahead and start. I mean, Brian will be in shortly. He's got his Hollywood Square up there. So, George, this was your baby. I'll let you start this off.
Look, I actually took inspiration from a really lovely guy called Lord Gazumba, who does a fantastic Twitch channel in the Greyhawk world, and has had Ed and Eric on lots of times. And he recently did a series that I watched in relation to the very fantastic classic G&D series. And as he was going through the modules and all the adventures, I thought to myself, what a great idea it would be to do this for the Haunted Halls, the great mega dungeon that never was. So that's when I suggested it to you, Jeff, and with your fantastic brilliance in organising things, here we are to talk about the Haunted Halls. And I know for a fact that we're unlikely to only talk about the Haunted Halls, but you never know.
Bite your tongue.
I imagine we'll have we have a few tangents planned, so or unplanned.
Yeah.
I have no idea. So go ahead, kick it off, George. What do you want to talk about on this?
Well, first and foremost, I want to talk about the fact that every campaign needs that entry-level dungeon. It needs that first place you send adventurers to. And I grew up playing seemingly every fourth week. When I started a new campaign, I started playing B2 Keep on the Borderlands, which was a fantastic module. And I think the Haunted Halls is the Realms version of the starter dungeon that every dungeon master needs. It's in every way an Ed Greenwood dungeon. It's different, it's lethal, it's got lots of interesting little bits and pieces. And in my view, that you can't go very wrong in terms of setting up your starting campaign with Eveningstar, the Haunted Halls, and a range of other good little things going around you. So, yeah, that was my idea. So I thought we'd talk about it because the one thing about the Haunted Halls is, and this goes back to another Twitch stream I heard Ed talking about, or a
Mic
podcast.
off.
Where
Mic feedback off.
Thanks, Jeff. That he was talking to someone how when he was originally asked to do the Haunted Halls of Eveningstar, he was told it was going to be a 90-something page product, which
Mic
he was very
on.
excited
Mic
about.
feedback on.
And what happened then was he got told that it's now become a 32-page product, and just cut it down and we'll be fine, which I'm sure Ed wasn't happy about, but he'll tell us more about that in due course, no doubt. But what I thought about in that context was all the stuff that we've missed out on. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us to talk about all the wonderful things about the Haunted Halls of Eveningstar, and more importantly, what we've missed out on and what we can add to that experience for everyone out there.
Absolutely.
So I was going to say I might push back on the analogy to B2 because there's also B1 in Search of the Unknown, which detailed some things, but didn't detail everything, which was a nice little aspect of Haunted Halls. Is it really encourages the DM to do some of his or her own, design, but then it kind of marries that little bit more free form with a really well detailed Eveningstar, which has a lot of analogies to Hamlet, T1. So to my mind, Haunted Halls of Eveningstar actually combined a little bit of all three of those in a really nice combination that you don't really see elsewhere, between between sort of a town like Hamlet, but also a dungeon that you can expand yourself, but also has some detail as well, like B2 did. So anyhow, just comment on that.
Yeah, I was more than a little concerned. All my editors took off on vacations and left Zeb Cook, the senior designer, to run the department. And that's when I was told that, unlike your contract, which says 96 pages, so I was doing a campaign starter with the Caverns of the Claws, which is a little warm-up series of crevasses in the side of the plateau, the north of Eveningstar, where trolls have recently taken up starting layered and just going out and attacking people on the road. So it's like, fight one troll. And if you don't look out behind you, the second one will hear all the noise and come out of its crevasse and attack you from behind. But if you do keep watching from behind, you'll see it coming. Really basic warm-up stuff. And then Pillar Rock, and then Whisper's Crypt, and then the Spires of the Morning temple was all detailed with all of its rituals and prayers throughout the day and what it did and what crops it grew. And then the entire village of Eveningstar was detailed with all the NPCs having little secrets and side quests and treasure, and some of them were spies for the crown of Cormyr, and some of them were spies for the Zhentarim, reporting to Whisper, and some of them were spies for the Zhentarim about Whisper, watching over Whisper for the Zhentarim. So all of that was built in, and it all just had to be swept away. And some of the empty rooms in the haunted halls were supposed to be empty because of things that had happened in the dungeon over the years. And others were empty just because I had to make word count and chop stuff out. So I just started hacking. So the Kobold lair and everything up on the upper level just went away because I had to make word count. That was long before the internet. There was no way of expanding word count at all. And there was no web enhancements. There was no homepage to put things on. Everything had to fit in the product. So the thing that was going to become a campaign starter turned into just a fragment of a dungeon.
So Ed, I ran a campaign in the haunted halls for 3 or 4 years, and it branched out, but it was basically based in Eveningstar when I was in grad school. And you had enough tidbits in there
Mic
about
off.
the Kobold level,
Mic feedback
above
off.
the main level, about Riviera's Keep, about the Tavern of the Claws, Whisper's Crypt. But you just mentioned one thing I don't think actually had any words in the module. Pillar. You said the something pillar.
Yeah, Pillar Rock.
Yeah, what was that? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, it's there on the maps, I think. There is a stack, a rock stack, on the way into the gorge, right at the mouth of the gorge. It's like a rock that just goes way up as a pillar, and in the base of it, there's a hiding place that for treasure. There's cache treasure. And that was just sort of supposed to be a free benefit. It was two things that had happened over the years. Some thieves had hidden some of their stash there, and what they didn't realize is local harpers had been stashing stuff for their own use there for quite a while. And the stuff they were stashing was things like a leather satchel full of healing potions. So if somebody got hurt and they could get to Pillar Rock, they could heal themselves or a hurt comrade. And if the party members find it, it's just like free stuff for them. And in there, because I was not a sadistic creep as a dungeon master, there was a means of dealing with the green slime.
Oh, interesting. More than fire, you mean something else special?
Yeah, there was a thing you could pour all over yourself, and it actually was labeled antidote for green slime. But there wasn't enough of it, if you see what I mean. It was going to rescue 2 people at most. So if one person got splashed right at the beginning and they had already done Pillar Rock, then they had their way out. But they also, it was like, we've got to avoid this because we don't have enough to do it again. So all of these things were sort of like an experienced party could just blow by them. But if you were playing D&D for your first time, it was sort of like gently by the hand taking you through some of the things you needed to keep in mind without seeming to do so.
Very cool. I see. I showed you the map up there. I do see it on that map. It's briefly mentioned. I didn't really realize what it was, but that is quite cool.
So much stuff got chopped out. I mean, I was trying to build a foundation for a campaign, and I ended up begging Zeb Cook to cut an ad for the RPGA so I could put in 2 monsters. You know, and that was the other thing. Up until then, we'd been allowed to do monsters in an abbreviated format, like just a paragraph, because when you encounter lock lurkers in this adventure, you really only need 1 paragraph for what they're going to be able to do. But the new thing at TSR was, oh no, everything has to have a full page write-up, every monster. And suddenly that starts chewing up your word count. And
very much so, because you have them in the Tressums.
Yes, yeah. And the Tressum, they were there for color, and that is a perfect example of a campaign module, not something that is absolutely critical to the adventure that you will go on down, you know, in the Haunted Halls. And it was sort of like, oh, but this is the signature thing for Lord Tesseril and all this stuff. I can't just get rid of it because that's the thing. You know, it's like taking away Long John Silver's parrot. You know, you know, I couldn't just dump it.
Very cool. What can you say about the Kobold level, Ed? Because I had a great time with that with my campaign. I decided to make a standard sized dungeon, but then lower the ceiling height to 4 feet for the whole dungeon. And it drove the players absolutely bonkers. I was inspired by Roger Moore had that editorial in Dragon 127 called Tucker's Kobolds. So I just made the whole level 4 foot tall. And it's amazing how much that drives the players nuts.
Yes, it does.
When they have to go around on their hands and knees.
-1 to attack?
Yeah. Well, no, in my original... In my original, that was a whole storage area. Like, when Riviera was like building his strength as a band trying to live there, they all needed bedrooms. They all needed places where they could just hang out and sharpen their swords and not be in each other's craw. They needed a place to store everything they'd stolen, because the whole point of yanking a caravan or attacking a wagon is to get the whole thing off the trail and no trace of it, so it just vanishes. And once you've got it hidden underground you can paw through it at leisure and say, oh, well, we're never going to use those. They can just rot in the corner. But, you know, the authorities coming along can't find hide nor hair of what's been stolen. That was the whole point. So there had to be room for it all. And then there was over the time, he needed more and more granary space to have food, because otherwise they couldn't make it through a winter, harsh winters there. So all that stuff was there and for human scale built by the dwarves for Riviera, but the kobolds had long ago taken it over, and they'd started bricking things up crudely to make them their size so they could defend. Like they had firing ports behind little half walls. They had arrow slits. So if you assaulted the Kobold lair by any other means than going up the shaft, and if you go up the shaft, they can dump stuff on your heads and they can fire down at you all the way up, but if you're going up any other way, you're encountering all of their defenses, and they have no mercy. They want you out of there. They want you to be scared to approach it, so they're going to unleash everything on you, because they are deathly afraid that if a large force of people get up on their level, that they won't be able to defeat them. So they're going to do everything they can to keep you down below and dissuade you, like give you heavy losses so you'll just go away. And almost none of that made it into the published module, because here's what the kobolds do. This is what their community does. This is where they get food. This is where they go foraging out in the Stonelands. I had everything detailed so that the dungeon master could run it all as a community. And all that had to go away, because it wasn't job one for adventurers coming in from the outside exploring. It was an easy cut because it was a different level, physical level of the dungeon. And I couldn't leave big gaps in the main level, because I was already facing criticism from designers inside the company. What do you mean you're leaving rooms empty? People think they're getting ripped off. They're paying money for this, And I said, good, give me back the word count then. Oh, no, we can't do that. Because
wait a minute. The product that left rooms empty sold out in 3 weeks of its first print run.
Yes.
How can they complain about that? It went through 6 print runs.
yeah, but Stephen, come on, you worked there.
I know, and I wasn't complaining.
you know that you should never, ever attach logic to any decisions made.
Well, that's true. That is true. So, yeah, sorry. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's totally okay. But I mean,
in some ways, anybody who wants to see how kobolds can defend themselves, I do believe you put a couple of very nasty kobold encounters in Ruins of Undermountain, either the first or the second level, one of the two.
Yes, because the problem was the other thing. Okay, we got to fill this space. We got to fill this box. Come on.
And you couldn't fill it?
Well, we had to do it in a heck of a hurry, meaning you guys didn't have time for me to find all my old notes and take them from faded pencil into typed input stuff and we'd already had the secretarial pool at TSR attack fantasy stuff, and the results were horrendous. Well, you see, these were nice little old ladies or middle-aged ladies from a Midwestern town who'd been used to working for American businessmen, and they were trying to turn everything into modern American business English. They would talk about mergers and acquisitions and efficiencies, and we would hand the manuscript that said, "Prithee, my lord, dost not thou how I trow?" And they'd go, "I think he meant this word." And they would go to some part of the dictionary and pluck some word that had nothing to do with anything we wanted to write about, and they would triumphantly put it in the product.
Wow, I think that had to have predated my time there, because we didn't have a secretarial pool at that point.
Well, you see, at that point, I've been forced. We are buying you a computer. You're inputting everything yourself, and that was to get away from these absolutely hilarious guesses on the part of these nice ladies who did not play the game and didn't know anything about this stuff, and they would just guess at what we meant to say. Oh, I think he means to say that he has to serve his tour of duty in Vietnam. Yeah. Seriously, there'd be stuff like that in it, and you just go, where did they come? Oh, I see. They don't They don't play the game. They know nothing.
They know nothing about that.
Good, yeah.
I had
Great.
I had an editor say one time, I don't think people will know what that word means. And I'm like, no, they will.
Yeah.
I'm like, just because you don't know what it means doesn't mean they won't know what it means.
Yeah.
Kurt Curry, you had a question?
So it's a little disillusioning for the player's perspective. Having played some games with you guys, Ed, I like one of the things that I've admired most is how free-form and interpreted things can be and ready to create on a moment's notice. And doing my homework for tonight's show, I was reading this little blurb that I thought was just this fantastic little Ed-ism, and it says right here in the opening introduction, no random encounter tables are provided in this adventure. The best encounters use creatures and situations deliberately chosen by the DM, which I thought that's, of course, the common, typical Edism that we would see in any of the things that we've done. And coming to find out it's a word count issue, I'm like, oh.
Yep, it's a word count issue. You bet.
Yep.
I had you see, I was actually told to do encounter tables for each level. You know, do of the dungeon, and that got pretty simple when the dungeon became one level. But literally, I was writing encounter tables because they said, "Well, that's what you have to do because that's what we do in D&D." So I did them, and then they had to cut them out. So then we had to have a rationale for why they weren't there. So they wrote that.
unless you're Stephen Shin, then you get an open checkbook for your box set.
I knew how to bribe my editors. What can I say?
You want full color pictures?
Wait. And
There goes our rating right there.
Wait, Stephen, I thought the name of the product was Ruins of Undermountain. When editors can't do math.
That's good.
No. Ruins didn't have problems. The one that broke the bank, I think, was probably City of Splendors.
City of Splendors.
I sat with the VP of Finance and we worked it out, and he gave me all that with some horse trading. He said, "Yeah, we can make that cost effective." Okay.
It's called carte blanche.
I got all that. Yeah. So Mike Martin is to blame, if anyone is, because he's the one doing the math. I'm an English major. I don't do math.
Yep.
And Jeff Grubb was in that meeting with me. He will back me up on that. So.
Which one? Jeff Grubb 1 or Jeff Grubb 2?
Yes.
Prime Jeff Grubb.
Prime Jeff Grubb. Okay.
Prime Jeff Grubb. Nice.
So I did say earlier that I ran a campaign in the off this 32-page module for 4 years while I was in grad school. So I can attest that a DM with a good group of players who love just getting together and running with it. We spent, they did the whole main level. They had the whole Kobold thing, and then I went down into the depths, and the Cavern of the Claws. I know you may have intended it to be short because they got to its second. It got very big with lots and lots of trolls because they were like, Whisper's Crypt took them 6 months to find it, let alone to get down into there. But one piece you may not know, Ed, is that the remnant or little tidbits from that campaign actually got published. So in Faith and Avatars, in the write-up of Torm, under affiliated orders, there's the Knight of the Order of the Golden Lion. So that was one of my players. He invented that order. And so when we were working on Faith and Avatars, I just slipped that one in. And then likewise, in the write-up of Shandakal, which I really like that deity because you had mentioned them in Ruins of Mithranor. In the write-up of Shandakal, there is the Knights of the Shadow Sword, founded by the half-elf Jack's Nightsong. So he was from the campaign too, from one of the players. So I did manage to slip a couple things from that campaign in there. They were some of the players, because we had a ranger of Shandakal, we had a paladin of Torm, we had a cleric of Lathander. So you can build things for your campaign, have your players come up with an order that they're from, if you'd like, or a secret organization, and then expand on it. And that too can drag you places. I know it dragged us repeatedly back to Arabelle as the group started fighting with each other. So they stayed based in Eveningstar, but they kept visiting Arabelle as well. So just some thoughts there too. And there's a ton of information in Volo's Guide to Cormyr that you wrote. That's a great deal of fun as well, including, if I remember right, Tesserel Winter. There's a little bit about a hidden hold that's up there by Eveningstar too. And that we brought that into the campaign as well. So anyhow, it's definitely one of the most fun adventures I've ever played.
That appears in Crown of Fire, I think.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah, the hidden hold, yeah.
So you sprinkled enough tidbits around about Eveningstar that if you look for them all, you can really build a huge campaign. You can go up into the Stonelands, you can find all sorts of ruins up there. The Zhentarim are passing through. I think you killed off your original Zhentarim spy, and they both started with an M, if I'm remembering right.
Maglor.
You killed off your original Zhentarim spy, but then you put a new one in for this generation of players after yours.
Yeah, that was fun. Fun times. People. Anyway.
Can you talk a little bit about?
I want to point out that George is a traitor.
We knew that.
I thought you'd be the only one to pick up on that, Brian.
Completely unacceptable, George. I've been to my core.
I missed that
Hi,
part.
everybody, by the way.
Hi,
Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hi.
I had a question for you too, Ed, if you want.
Sure.
But can you talk a little bit about Swords of Eveningstar? Because that was set in this area too, your novel.
Swords of Eveningstar. The novel Swords of Eveningstar? The novel Swords of Eveningstar. And part of that novel includes a visit to the haunted halls.
That was why I brought it up.
That's right.
And that was just there because it was one more chance to get back to the haunted halls and try and put back what has been taken away. No, you have to picture me as being in pitched, underhanded battle with the powers that be at TSR, never wanting to fight with them, but just wanting to quietly get my own way sooner or later. Even if it was another product, even if it was like 5 years down the road, by guess and by gosh, I was going to get that into print because gamers were waiting for it. The hell with editorial decisions. This needed to be there as a completist or this or that, and I might be right, I might be wrong, but over the years, whenever something got cut out, I can see the lack. It isn't just, oh, my baby got one of its arms or legs cut off and didn't get into print. It's like, no, there's a design hole here. There's a thing at the table where the dungeon master is going to have to make something up on the fly and go, geez, there's nothing in here on such and such when it should have been there. And of course, part of that is my own fault for always trying to squeeze a quart into a pint pot. I always wanted to put more in than could go in the product. And because I always wanted to, well, this is what we would do. And if somebody does something crazy, you'll need this. And, so I was always trying to cram more in. But, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But if it didn't work and stuff got cut out, I was always trying to find a way to sneak it into print somewhere.
Digital Pack Rat asks, was the haunted halls of Eveningstar the same module where they cut out the barrel of turnips?
No.
No, because he remembered you talking about a barrel of turnips at Gen
Well,
Con.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yes.
Sorry,
There's a barrel of carrots.
Sorry, it was a battle of carrots, Packrat. So sorry.
No, the turnips were Undermountain.
A barrel of turnips?
Yeah, the motif for the haunted halls was a small hand keg of pickles that if you found them in the dungeon and brought them back to Eveningstar and tried to unload them as opposed to eating them yourselves or stashing them away, if you tried to unload them at the Lonesome Tankard or anywhere to anybody in town, you would get noticed by the authorities because somebody would sample some of these pickles and then say to Tessero, you know, these taste very like the pickles that were taken from the king's. You might want to pull these guys in for questioning.
Call them in for tasting the king's pickles.
Yeah, no, call them in for questioning. Where did they get these?
Where'd you get the king's pickle?
This would be your first taste of. We just like to know where you came by these. Can I see your adventurous charter again? You know, and it just sort of, so anybody who's had one of those, you know, stopped by the cops and the drawling questions, this would be their moment of going, oops, because it was another moment to remind them that Cormier was a law and order country compared to many places in the realms, that there was a central government and they did patrol and they did keep an eye on things. And then you became aware, or you should become aware at that point in your own campaign, that if you attracted the interest of the authorities and you got questioned by the Purple Dragon, from then on you were being watched. Where you went, what you did. So if you were going to go on exploring the haunted halls or up into the Stonelands, that was fine. But they were going to be watching for you when you came back, because how do we know these guys aren't working with the Zhentarim? Either deliberately or unwittingly. You know, maybe the Zhentarim are going to use them as the dupes for the last leg of bringing goods into Eveningstar. You know, they'll find the stuff and bring it in triumphantly. You know, look what we found, you know. And therefore they will be running interference for the real smuggling shipments. So we're going to keep an eye on these guys, which meant that you were going to have spies all over you all the time. And as long as your player characters were law-abiding and so on and so forth, no problem. But if you decided to get up to any hanky-panky, you were going to be doing your hanky-panky in front of very watchful veteran Purple Dragons who are all reporting in. Because like all Purple Dragons who have been given a lousy, boring frontier detail, they're desperate for stuff to put in their reports to make it look like they're actually doing their jobs. So instead of, well, it rained again today, also rain. And did I mention rain? You know, they don't want reports like that. They want reports like apprehended 6 smugglers. They'll never get through here again, sort of thing.
Right.
So they're looking for you, which means you're now being watched, which makes things far more hilarious, because if you have good players and they occasionally look behind them and tell the dungeon master, okay, we're keeping watch on the rear. Do we see anything? Well, yeah, there's this guy who's leaning against the wall. He looks asleep. He's got his, you know, hat pursed down. Okay, I'm going to pretend I'm hiding something in my hands and run around the corner. What does he do? He's getting up. He's strolling, oh, so casually, along the wall to the next building. So now when he sits down, he can see where you've gone. Aha! You know, so if you were watching, you realize, oh my God, we're under surveillance. Holy shit. Which also meant if you wanted to get other people in trouble or expose a Zent guy, you now knew how to do it by leading the Purple Dragon spies right to somebody. And that added that layer outside of the pure dungeon crawl, where suddenly it becomes interesting to be in a small rural community where everybody, the drapes twitch because all the little old ladies are watching you from behind their drapes, because they watch everybody, not because you're particularly suspicious. They just watch everything. So, you ride into town, somebody wounded late at night, half over their saddle, and you watch all the drapes twitch all the way along the street. Oh, and it makes the campaign way more compelling. And you're living in a place and you're part of it. You're not part of the gossip. You're the local entertainment. What will these crazy adventurers do next?
I like that.
And then, of course, some people are going to sell that information. They're going to go somewhere else to a purple dragon. They say, "So, would it be worth 2 coppers to you to learn who sneaks out of town in the wee hours?" It would be considered a service of loyalty to the crown if you just told me. Yeah, but this isn't sort of crown business. This is sort of like, you could personally advance in the regard of your guard captain business. Oh, I see the way things are blowing. Yeah, I happen to have a couple extra coffee, and then away you go.
Well, that always reminds this kind of conversation always reminds me about the vignettes in all the novels and stuff with Purple Dragon guards and stuff, and it always occurs to me that people should be careful what they wish for. Like, if you're really good at guarding a frontier town,
yeah,
you're gonna stay guarding a frontier town.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
And so if you're the one shelling out money to get information about where everybody is in the frontier town, okay, maybe you'll become the sword captain there, but getting transferred to Arabelle where there's regular running water and
yes, yeah, no, you're right.
And the baths and stuff. I mean, one of the things that's always fun to think about with regard to the realms is the internal stories of all these characters that we only see for a moment. And I think it's why Eveningstar getting crunched from 96 to 32 pages is such a tragedy, is because we miss out on all these faces that had all these internal stories to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm saddened by it, because this was my chance to establish the standard that every small place in the realms, whether we can squeeze it into every product or not, it has this level of detail there. And then I was sort of hoping that it would become expected, as a standard. So there, because, and I don't mean this as no disrespect to Gary or Greyhawk at all, but one of the things that annoyed me the most as a green novice gamer, when I was reading The Village of Hamlet, and it's 3 buildings. That's not a village, And I remember warning Jeff when I, water deep in the north, "Jeff, this is a city." And he goes, yeah. And I said, "You given me 64 pages to do a city and the north? This is going to be an AAA triptych."
Oh God.
And he said, "Well, this is what's been decided." And that's how city system, because he taped the stuff together. He unpackaged my giant 55-page map thing at 8.5 by 11 and taped them all together. And the only place he could do it was the open space between the end of Cubicle Land and the 2 washrooms up there. And because people cut through the building, TSR Vice President was cutting through from the Dungeon Order hobby shop and the print end of the building, and rounded the corner, and Jeff said, "Don't walk on it, don't walk on it," and he stopped and he looked down and said, "What's this?" And he goes, "Oh, this is Ed's just sent me, this is Waterdeep." And that's how we got City System, because the guy says, we're going to have to publish this. Oh, look at this. Because for the first time, they had something with a big enough scale that good old school war gamers could go, oh, look, me wants,
I almost wish that they could do it now with some better production values, but
yeah. But and now, if I have any criticism at all of the new book that's just come out, the Riggs book, Slaying the Dragon, there's some things in it that are written from the point of view of today, and things like, but TSR was still hunting for a best-selling author. No, they weren't.
No,
they were publishing games. They never looked up for them. They weren't going, how can we succeed in corporate America? They were just publishing the next cool game thing. It is the act of looking back from the vantage point of today, of saying, well, at this time, this was happening in the marketplace. That you're crediting the people in the building at TSR with way too much time on their hands to sit back and think, I wonder what they're doing in New York. I wonder what the trends are.
Speaking as a person from that building,
at
least those of us working on the products, we were focused on the next deadline, and that's all we had time to be focused on.
Yeah.
Maybe the executives were thinking about, well, what's going on in New York and this and that, but that was above our pay scale.
Yeah.
We were just trying to crank stuff out.
Yeah.
But so before I forget, I wanted to ask Ed a question. Something in regards to the Cormier dragons, keeping an eye on people and sending word back and so forth. I may be just having a brain cloud, but have we ever mentioned the use of pigeons as message carriers, or any sort of message carriers?
I did have Tressim mentioned as it. One Tressim going down to Dead Luke and talking to a Tressim there. And I did have pigeons put in to an early Realms product, and they were taken out, I think by Zeb Cook, but I'm guessing here because I wasn't in the building. Because he was like, no, that's too World War I, World War II.
I don't recall Zeb ever having much say on the Realm stuff, but that might have been just before my tenure. I don't know.
Well, I think it was at the time when everybody was on vacation and he was left in charge. At the Haunted Halls time, I mean, normally he was just a designer in the thing, but I think he was senior designer. And when everybody went on vacation, he was sort of like, don't let anybody blow up the moon. Yep, no problem. I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, couple things. First, thank you for Digital Pack Rat for the 10 gift subs.
Yes, thank you.
To the channel, including to me. But Iron Dawn had a question a little while back. And Debbie's got another, I'm not sure their pronouns, but there's another question. But first, Ed, will we ever see your version of the halls? And before you answer any part of that question, how many times did we ask to revisit the halls in 3rd edition? How many times?
Oh, gosh.
Uncountable.
Yeah, many times.
We asked a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever see it because it was my 63rd birthday yesterday, and I was just thinking to myself, okay, I might have 10 years of writing left. So I need to do some novels. I want to do some novels, and I want to publish some Realm stuff. And Alex Kammerer and I have been publishing some stuff at the Guild, and I've done a new Volos guide that'll come out this fall with another crew of designers, Canadian guys, Clint Cronk and Jeff and so on. But there's a limit to the amount of time that I will have left. And the question is rooting through my papers to try and find old stuff the best use of it, or do you want this or that newer stuff that is germane to whatever is unfolding now? And I'm not answering that question. I'm just asking it. And because it's always what pops up into my head. So what's the best thing we could do here? And yes, for nostalgia reasons, I want all that stuff found and published. But searching and trying to piece together stuff is inherently going to take longer. And that's what often happened for realm stuff much later on in the development of the realms. Particularly when I was getting drunk. I mean, having editorial meetings with Peter Archer at Gen Cons, it would always faster to just write up new stuff rather than find the old stuff. He'd say, do you still have such and such? And I'd say, somewhere. He goes, do you think you can find it in, I don't know, by the time I get home from Gen Con? Because that's all the time we've got. And I just roll my eyes and say, no, I'll just write new. Whether I tell them I'm writing new or not, I'll just write new because we don't have time. And that happens it's a tragedy, but it happens over and over again. And again, I'm not saying that is the right answer. I'm just saying that's always the question that pops into my mind. Would it be more worthwhile to gamers now to have this new?
Some of us can tell when you've done it.
Yeah, of course.
I wanted to bring up, because I think this is something, and it's just related directly to the halls. When we were doing that series of articles in Dungeon and Dragon magazines for 4th edition, I purposely gutted the halls. I did a gut reno that nobody noticed. So in 1407, the year of the halls unhaunted, the year opened with rumors of a complete clearing of the fabled haunted halls of Eveningstar. A dozen adventuring companies were wiped out in the year that followed, leading to a formal proclamation forbidding entry to the halls without an explicit warrant from the crown. Sorry, unplugged my mic. Without an explicit warrant from the crown. And we did this to, one, give DMs room to play, but also to open up the possibility of taking the map, just the map, and repopulating it for a new edition. In the hopes that one day someone would revisit it and get the chance to use the expanded map and not just what wound up in the original module.
Well, Turbine did.
They did.
Yeah.
Shame on them.
Yes. Yeah.
That was for D&D Online.
Yeah. They actually they flew a crew up to Ontario, and we went to a small a guy's private recording studio. You know, a gent who was in the Canadian music industry had just converted his garage into a top level studio. And we recorded voiceovers, and they had expanded on the history of the haunted halls and I think it was called Back to the Haunted Halls or something like that. So we actually did that, and I did a voiceover for it and everything. And then, of course, I think that sort of stood in the way of doing print ones, if you see what I mean.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, that's... once they've let a licensee play, they're not going to let...
Yeah.
They're not going to go and play themselves.
Yeah.
But as we've noticed, what happens in the video games is not always canon to the print product, especially now that there exists a multiverse of canons, apparently.
True. Yeah.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the complicating factor in this case was that Jim Butler, who had been running the game department at TSR, was now the guy at Turbine. So
it does make things interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a bad joke of they've turned the realms into Charge of the Light Brigade. Cannons to the left of them, cannons to the right of them.
Volleyed and thundered into the valley of death. Rode the
Yes, rode the 600, right?
Yeah.
Lauren Dawn had another
Sorry.
question, asking you to tell the audience about the mind ream spell that war wizards use.
Yes. This was the interrogation spell, where your Wizards of War sit you down and ask you a heavy-duty interrogation where they can, having warmed you up that way, they can just like go into your brain and read the memories. And the reason I wrote it up that way was to A, point out the moral bad thing of doing this, and B, to have it actually injure the brain of the person you're mind dreaming, and have a risk of injuring the brain of the person doing the reaming. And what that had the effect of doing was making it this is for gravest emergencies only, when the fate of the realm hangs in the balance. We don't do it every time we catch somebody near a theft. We don't haul him in and mind ream him to see if he was involved, because the cost to everybody involved is so high that it's just not right morally. And I wanted that. I was playing with what is the morality, who watches the watchers, the old, which is always relevant. You could, right now there's all this stuff about defund the police and so on, but I mean, it is not specific to one society or time. This is a universal thing. How much power do you let the people you allow to have authority? What are the limits? What should they be, and what in practice do they turn out to be? Because everybody starts to, power corrupts, and everybody starts to misuse the power they've had. Is it a good thing to have this sort of police state? If you are a law and order type, you might think Vangrudahast was great for the realm because he safeguarded the realm so well. If, on the other hand, you were a noble who wanted to do as you pleased, he was the biggest pain in your butt,
Mm-hmm.
And you might have very legitimate morality concerns about this guy, this wizard, and what he's doing. And I was deliberately showing that in the novels, and he starts doing the old thing from Camelot, l'état c'est moi, it's like he starts to think that Cormyr is him, not the Obarskers. He doesn't serve the Obarskers. He serves
Cormyr,
the Dragon Throne. But what is the Dragon Throne? It's whatever I say it is. So what he's neatly maneuvered into is Cormyr is me. And if I like something, that's okay for Cormyr. And if I don't like something, that's not okay for Cormyr. And then you realize, oh, you've got a tiger by the tail, because this guy, you're depending upon him behaving in a good fashion, because you no longer have proper safeguards built into your system. You are depending on people behaving as a reasonable, the old standard in Anglo-Saxon law, upon which American law has been built, and British law and Commonwealth, the standard of the reasonable man in the community. What would the reasonable man think? That's what jury duty and everything is based on. Yeah, the problem is, who defines what's a reasonable man?
Right.
And when you start defining it in a way that only lets your friends or your party or the 1% or slave owners or whatever it is, and then that's something that I always want to explore without shoving it down anybody's throat if they don't want it in their game. It's always interesting to have there dangling as something to be explored if it interests you. because these are universal things. And if you are an adventurer in D&D, you are a rule breaker. You are outside the customary law of society. So how far are you going to be tolerated, or are you going to be the scapegoats? Are you suddenly going to be framed or blamed by people in power when unpopular things happen, or and all of that? And you can, if you don't want it in your campaign, you don't have to have it in your campaign. In the same way that people would say, "Oh, I don't want demons and devils in my campaign. That's Satanism and witchcraft." Well, you don't have to have them in your campaign. But if you want to have something for paladins to fight, well, there's that page in the player's handbook at Paladin in Hell, and he's fighting devils. But if you don't want your paladins to fight devils, you don't have to use them in the game. The same way your game doesn't have to go into these moral questions and what are the limits of government and what shape do we want government to have? But if you want it in your campaign, Cormyr is tailor-made for it, because you've got all these nobles, some of whom think the Obarskers are no better than me. They just got to the throne first. They're first among equals. They're not our betters. And of course, they're trying every time. Oh, you're just clamping down. You and your GD Wizards of War. They're just clamping down on us. It's the not so secret police. Well, that may be good enough for that serf over there, but it ain't good enough for me. And you can play all those things if you want to put them in your campaign. And if you don't, you just leave them out.
What I liked about the Mind Ream spell, because you used it a few times in the Silverfire Chandrel series, and I thought you really expressed it well, because I think at least one of the several times you did it, it rebound back on the War Wizard, and just turned him to a blithering idiot. Just pretty much, they put him in a dungeon and he's done with there. But I like the way you used it. You didn't overuse it either. I think maybe you used it 3 times in the novels, those 3 novels, maybe. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, it's mentioned much more than it's actually used.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I liked the most about it was when it was initially used on Caladne, as she was becoming High Wizard, because it revealed the person who's going to be in charge of this is now fully aware of how violative it is.
Yes.
And what it can do to the target. But it's also one of the reasons why we had a bunch of War Wizard heads explode during the spell play.
Yes. Yeah.
We did this on, we did a lot of people are like, well, can we have a timeline of what happened between 3rd edition and 4th edition? I was like, it's there. You got to buy it. It's there.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's lots of little things we slipped in, that are stories in themselves that we had to somehow fit into 1 or 2 sentences. And one of those things was a third of all War Wizards either flat out died or went completely insane, because they had spells like the mind reading spells in memory, for lack of a better term, when the spell plague hit them.
Right.
The spell plague wasn't a moment; it was a wave. And so, that you have a spell that has the potential to destroy minds, and suddenly magic doesn't work properly. Guess whose mind gets destroyed?
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have something that can blow your head up. Magic doesn't work properly. Guess whose head gets blown up?
Yeah.
But it was one of the difficulties of transitioning into 4th edition, was trying to tell all these stories of a continually operating world when there's a time skip, but you've got at least one area where there's no potential for a dark age here, right? There's no way to say, well, we don't know what happened over those 100 years. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You have an operating court with royal scribes all over the place, and and magical safeguards.
I actually had to have a fight with an on-staff designer at the time. We're not filling in that gap. But you have to here, because we're postulating that the Obarskers are still on the throne, and this time and they were on the throne before. We have to show the line through, even if it's very, very abbreviated. We have to show the line through.
I mean,
no, we don't. Yes, we do.
Well, it's an alphabet problem, right? You're going from A to R.
Yeah.
And you're presuming that no one cares what comes in between.
Yeah.
But in a stable monarchy, people absolutely care what comes in between. You have a functioning nobility, people absolutely care what happened in between. Even if it's just a skeleton, even if it's just a sketch.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't publish it.
Right.
But you have to know.
You have to know.
Author, how do I have a plausible continuous history to get here? And I think
the timeline of Cormyr to be published in glowing.
I got it here somewhere.
Yeah.
No, but I mean it's the problem of the 4th edition jump writ small, right? You know, in every place you have to have a plausible history, even if it's not revealed.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a and you can say, oh, it's magic. You can say, oh, these people got transported over from a beer. You can have you have to have an alternative theory of the crime to make it make sense. You know, because otherwise people are going to make it up themselves, right?
There are lots of ways to make it make sense, I think. But I do think it makes it challenging to have that big of a jump. You know, one of the ways that I like to do it is to look backwards rather than forwards and say, what were the pieces on the playing table a long time ago? So to bring it back to the halls a little bit, like, Ed, I think if I'm remembering correctly, in the haunted halls, in one of the rooms, you can find an artifact of Salamber, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember if that's right. Yes, I am right. So on the wall in one of the rooms is hanging, 2 cross shields and a large metal shield. It's just a +1 shield, which is kind of boring to most adventurers, right? Unless it's their first one, they're like, "Oh, give me something unique." But this one is painted, with the russet-colored, flame-breathing, rearing dragon of Salamber. And as a DM, that all of a sudden is like, well, how did that get there? What story was being told? How did it work? I know that when I was playing with this stuff for the campaign I was running there, like there was a brief mention, I don't remember if it was here or somewhere else, of Esparin, a little tiny kingdom centered around Northwest Cormyr. And so, from my mind, all of a sudden, boom, now I've got a little bit more about Riviera, and there's some history I can start building up. And it may seem to some DM, some people love all that history, and some are like, well, if it doesn't impact tonight's game, why do I care? But if you can figure out enough of that history to kind of tell you who crossed paths with this, then when you put a magic item in the dungeon, you're like, I know how it got there, right? Which means if somebody finds it and they bring it out, that could have some repercussions. Like all of a sudden, rumors start spreading that, someone in Espar or in Eveningstar has been seen bearing the heraldic symbol of Salamber, the rebel prince. Rumors are that Obarskers are, sending agents to fight these new rebels, right? And it's just a PC wandering around with a stupid shield. But, you can do stuff like that, bring the stuff that was back and earlier and kind of make it part of the adventure going forward. So if you know half a dozen fallen kingdoms that were around the area, then you can fill your dungeons with the artifacts of those fallen realms. At least that's how I always did it.
And even if your players and your campaign, they're not interested, if you put them in, or little hints in a published thing, in this case, the published Haunted Halls, it feels real. It feels like this place is old and has its own history. So even if you're not actually going to develop any of that for your players, anybody else just reading through it, and there's always been that large community of gamers who don't have anybody to game with right now locally, or who never will, and they read the stuff as literature, as entertainment. They read through each new thing. They can they can think about all the possibilities, and they read this and that's really cool. Why is that shield there? What does that mean? And it just feels more real and more, and because of that feeling of reality, everything they do as adventurers feels more important, more as if it makes a difference in the world, because to them it does. Particularly if they do something like, I don't know, torch the green slime, and then there's a burn scar on the ceiling, and every time they go in, they see the burn scar. Hey, we left our mark. And and I mean, I realize not everybody in life wants to leave their mark forever, on the world. Not everybody's making their bid for immortality, but there's that little feeling like we did that. We mattered. Kilroy was here. we leave our mark behind, and that makes even for somebody who is just casually gaming because they're the grandparent or uncle or chaperone of the kid, so they sit down to make sure this really isn't dangerous satanic witchcraft stuff, and they play a game for an evening, and afterwards they say that was pretty cool. And it's little touches like you actually left a mark, as opposed to we butchered 46 orcs. It's we did that, and we found this artifact, and we brought it out, and we gave it to the head man of the village, and he was impressed. And he says, I hadn't seen that since I was a little boy. Where did you find this?
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, Eric, just so you know, that was an example of an NPC voice.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to learn how to do that one of these days, but not today.
Not today, okay.
This is not that day.
This is not that day.
But I actually did want to talk about, I know there's a couple artifacts that you can stick that are from really old parts of the published lore that you can stick in that I did figure out probably were in here. And for context, so in what actually got published, you mentioned Whisper's Crypt and barely said anything about it, other than we knew Whisper was a member of the Zhentarim. And that name always struck a bell with me because you had mentioned Whisper at least once, if not twice before then. In FR4, the Magister, there's Whisper's Rod, Whisper's Wand. I'm blanking on which one it is. George, you can tell.
Yeah, it's Rod of Transportation.
Yeah, Whisper's Rod of Transportation. So there's another thing along with Salamber's Shield you can put in the dungeon somewhere. And then I think, based on some stuff you had done on the book Misuntal's Runes, I had written up the 7 lost rings of Misuntal, and at least 2 of those I think Whisper had as well. So for me, all those little tidbits of lore around Whisper, the Zhentarim agent, were always really cool. And I know you've seen this, Ed, and I've got it hidden behind me. But so somehow George got a hold of your original map of Whisper's Crypt. And it was the world's worst photocopy. It was incredibly hard to figure out. And I was looking at it and looking at it and looking at it. And so I decided to redraw it. And I'll figure out some way to share it after this. But can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is my interpretation of Ed's original dungeon of Whisper's Crypt. And I don't know if this was part of your turnover or just something George found, but this was, as best we can tell, your original map. And up here in the upper corner, it says up to sub-level 1, Haunted Halls Room 6, which I'm presuming is not actually shown in the Haunted Halls. It's the level below it that we didn't get to see.
Right.
And when we were chatting, you told me that Whisper's Crypt is actually in room 1. You told me that 19 and 8 are actually pit traps, and 9 was an air shaft up to a crack above that let in fresh air.
It was a ventilation shaft, yeah.
Ventilation shaft, yeah. So anyhow, I will share this with folks, but this is based on my best ability to copy exactly what you have on this old, terrible photocopy that George had made and share with folks. So anyhow, Whisper's Crypt to me was always the coolest place. I was delighted to see the map, and it's fun to stick things in like Whisper's Rod of Transportation and the Lost Rings of Misunderstandings and whatever else you can find out. I don't know. Is there anything else you can tell us, Ed, that would be in there?
Okay, so Whisper was, as if you adventure, he's incredibly low level. If you're expecting to, bump off this huge, powerful wizard, he's not. He's a local Joe job, watch over this bit of the trade route, and they gave him some of these items to use and have to make him not such a complete pushover if he ever had to defend himself. But he was basically the guy watching over the spies, the Zhent spies, on this tiny little portion of their overland trade route. And the idea is that he watches the legitimate trade that goes back and forth on the road, and he is to distract from anything the Zhents are doing through the Stonelands, to keep the Cormyrean authorities focused on the trade that is going by the regular channels on their own roads. The road through from Highhorn that goes through Eveningstar and then goes on to Tilverton and Arabelle and so on and so forth. So that they can do stuff in the Stonelands and not get noticed. And, of course, how successful any of that is depends very much on the player characters, because there was the old, we offer the barony of the Stonelands to the, which was the, here you go, you can be a baron if you can possibly police this and settle in it, suckers, because we've never figured out how to do it and hang on to it. So it's, why don't you have a go, you intrepid adventurers, which is, if you are the sort of adventurers who want to go places and do things and be free-spirited and change the world, you don't want to get tied down into this thing which is basically border policing for Cormyr. But if you don't mind going through all the hassles and problems, and then it is something worthwhile. And it's one of those lovely choices. Are you going to settle down and become a member of society and then put up with somebody else telling you what to do? These idiots in Suzail who never come out here and dirty their boots but presume to tell you what to do all the time? Or do you want the freebooting adventuring life? And again, there's no right answer to this. It's presenting life choices for people. What do they want to do in life? Because that's the other cool thing about D&D. If you have young players, you can give them a chance to think about what they want to do in life without it being real life and really screwing up their lives if they make the wrong decision. They can have a fun time at the gaming table without somebody ramming it down their throat as you must make this moral choice. They just get practice at making life decisions without anybody really admitting necessarily that that's what's happening. But it makes it feel more real and it feel more significant because the decision you made now has consequences. Anyway, I could blather for hours about the philosophical underpinnings of the dungeon.
You may continue then.
Ed, I remember at one point you talked about using the haunted halls as your go-to campaign at the library for new kids who were coming in. Is that right?
That was one of them. What I did with all new kid campaigns, because they were at the library, it was always a set time, as in set number of sessions. Like we'd have 13 sessions, and then the program would be over, because the library, they didn't care about Satanism or witchcraft or anything. They cared about bums in seats and good statistics. And when you can cram 65 kids, your fire limit, into the room to watch one Disney movie for half an hour, doing this intensive program where you take 6 kids and they sit there for 13 weeks doesn't seem like you're serving the community as well. So they were always under the gun for like, let's make these programs short. Let's make them have a definite end time. So in order to accomplish that, I would make them adventuring companies in Cormier with a charter. And when they were issued the charter, it gave them their starting assignment. You have to go and clean out the haunted halls, or you have to go and do this or do that, because then there's no wasting. And I would use pre-gens that I had made up with backstories that were interesting as well. Then we don't waste endless time rolling up characters and deciding what to do. You can decide what you do after you've blooded yourselves, after you've had your first adventure. But at the beginning, you have to go and do this thing. It's your assignment. So you rush off and do it. And that sets things going, and so no time is wasted. And that was just the way I set it up. And the haunted halls was one of the many places they came back to again and again, because it was, if I had to do something in a hurry at the library because another program had been canceled because nobody came. Like, for instance, they would love to do teen programs on good grooming for teens. Well, nobody wants to attend a program like that unless your parents force you to go. So they had a lot of programs where nobody came. And the librarian would come upstairs with her mouth set in a prim line and said, "Not one. Nobody came. I don't know what's getting into children these days." And I'd say, "Why don't I go and run D&D?" "Oh, is that satanic thing you do?" "Yes, that's that satanic thing I do." They love it. "Well, I'm not sure that well, why don't you come and watch it?" And then I would advertise it by going to our local gaming stores in Toronto and putting up little posters. And when the time came to have the program, they'd have standing room only. People had come from all over the city because there weren't enough. It was early days of the hobby, and there weren't enough places that they could. And I can just join. Yeah, characters will be provided. Oh, cool. And then when they got there, this is the Forgotten Realms. This is the guy who designed the Forgotten Realms. So these are official characters, right? And then if I had to do something like that in a hurry, I would just pick up the haunted halls because it was there. And the neat thing about picking up the haunted halls when it was there, because you'd run it over and over again, you knew where some of the hitches were for parties. You knew the things that were going to give them problems. And you knew when you needed to give them sort of nudge help so they wouldn't, do a total party kill by misinterpreting something. And, there are people who have played the haunted halls as it was published and have quite legitimate criticisms. "Oh, there are all these deadly traps." Well, yeah, but there's the difference between the haunted halls as it got printed, because we had to shorten it so drastically, and how it was when I was running it. And when I'm running it, I'm trying very hard, and there is the one notable green slime exception, but I'm trying very hard. You're getting warned about everything. There's I don't know, you don't like the look of that latrine seat. So even if you have to go, I don't know, so, you'd be getting these warnings from the dungeon master. So it would be, and I'd be continually describing the smells, the damp. There's dripping water way off in the distance, and you think you hear movement. We do? Where it's coming from? Oh, I don't know. You don't hear it now. It was just for a moment there. So you're getting these warnings. Okay, there's somebody or something alive here, there, somewhere. So yeah, I would use the haunted halls over and over again, but I also used many other things. And if you play in a sort of pickup or charity thing that I do at one of the conventions nowadays, I will quite often use the Baron's Blades, which are a series of characters that I used over and over and over again, because they've become a shorthand, so I don't have to think about the party of adventurers, and we can just concentrate on the story. And I know there are people who like to min-max and so on, and they sort of look at the characters and go, they're at different levels. They're not balanced. I don't care. Is life balanced? Really?
No.
Yeah.
Unless you've ever played the game with you, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. I am always going to be on the side of the players. They are almost always going to automatically get initiative with no rolling. I'm always going to give them the chance. What do you do? The thing is charging towards you, but while it's charging, you have time to think of what you want to do. Because I'm not interested in killing off player characters. I'm interested in giving people a darn good time. Mm-hmm. And the darn good time has to involve choices on their part. Because if they don't get any choices, if they're just fighting to stay alive as I throw one thing after another at them, where's the fun in that? I'm wasting their evening. I mean, they could go down to the schoolyard and get beaten up by the school bully and have the same experience.
That's true. Is that your Baron's Blade character, George?
Yeah, that's Brelagar of Tempest.
We come in peace, shoot to kill.
Who,
if I remember, has a much shorter cloak because I kept stealing stuff.
Ed, just riffing off your stories of adventurers going into the Haunted Halls, you showed that to us in your Swords of Eveningstar novel, where you showed the Knights of Mithranor have a fairly quick, abortive first foray into the halls.
Yes.
I was just wanting to know just how the real Knights of Mithranor dealt with the halls. Was it, big session or multiple sessions or interspersed with other things, or how closely was it reflected in some of the stuff that was in the novel?
Good question.
Okay, yeah. The stuff in the novel is nothing like what happened in the campaign, because in the novel, it had to happen pretty quickly, and I couldn't spend much page count on it. And there were other things that had to happen in the novel were, quote, more important for character development, if you know what I mean. In the real original campaign, they realized pretty quickly that they were on to something, that what they were seeing in the haunted halls didn't add up about the story of what they've been told the haunted halls were, and they wanted to investigate. And they also were getting the inkling that the haunted halls wasn't as, quote, dead and abandoned as some people thought it was. Not the locals. The locals in Eveningstar were like, oh no, don't go near the haunted halls. The bad thing, people don't come back, It's like, oh, so the locals think there's still something going on. The authorities are going, oh, that's an abandoned thing. We go in every 2-3 years to scour out. We always get brigands in there. The bandits just, there you go. It's there they are now.
Yeah, they are now.
But I mean, they sort of poo-pooed it. But if you find Mior, if you find some of the hidden stuff, then you start to realize there's more to this than you realize. And then as you do that, Whisper is getting more and more antsy because you're getting closer and closer to where he hides out. And whether or not he thinks you'll find him, it's hampering his regular, the spies reporting to him relaying orders to them, the local guys coming through with hot stolen stuff, and they just want him to hide it in the crypt for, a month or so, and then the next guy through will pick it up again. And if the player characters are bumbling around, getting closer and closer to him, he starts to feel he has to arrange accidents for them, and or frame them for things with the authorities. Just get rid of them, so that they don't have the leisure to go on bumbling around. That they're either dead or gone or busy or in a prison cell or being questioned or being spied upon. He wants problems for them because he wants them gone out of his hair. This was a plum job, and then these idiots came along, and if you run it that way, it then does become an interesting campaign thing that can last for years. And the player characters are literally choosing what's going to happen by their actions. I mean, they could just leave the whole area and move on somewhere else for adventure. Or they could decide they're going to settle down here. Or they could think, there's something here we have to figure out. And, I think we could probably get a lot of credit with the authorities and stop getting spied on and so on and get trusted, if we bring back and do the right things and we find out the right stuff. So let's get tucked in here and really find out stuff, and let's share everything we find with the local war wizards and so on. And Tesseril, she seems like a good sort. If we can impress her and she puts in a good word for us, maybe we won't be the suspicious, tolerated adventurers anymore. Maybe we'll get a little bit of trust, and maybe we might even get some crown missions of some sort when the weather gets bad in the winter, if we're still around here. And then maybe we'll get a little bit trusted by the purple dragons, the local ones. Maybe they won't give us a side eye when they see us. Maybe they'll start treating us like, oh, we rely on those guys, they're okay, and that is treasure of a sort. It's an achievement that you can really feel good about at the gaming table, particularly if you are a lonely, misfit, nerdy kid who doesn't fit in. And it may just be an imaginary fantasy world, but you've been accepted. You've earned it by your own actions. You've done something. You're being respected in the community. You're a pillar of the community for something you did. And that feels mighty good when you're really a 98-pound weakling at the bottom of your class, too young to be allowed to do anything. And your parents have a curfew for you, and you can't make the football team because, you're a 98-pound weakling, and the teacher thinks you're destined to fail his class and says so all the time. But never mind, you go and play D&D, and, you're a scourge of the unclean, and the whole community depends on you. You're a somebody, and it feels real good.
It does. See, back in the day for me, though,
So how many groups did you end up running through the halls, all told, do you think, Ed?
Oh, gosh. Probably about 40, all told. Yeah, not counting the original company as one, no matter how many times they visited.
Yep. Did you reset the encounters each time for the library campaigns, or did you have them trickle over onto the top of each other like it was a succession of companies?
Yeah, like the latter. What one company did affected what the next group in found. The dungeon was alive. It was growing. It was living. Things were happening, and there were reactions to what they did. So if they cleared out one set of monsters, another set of monsters would move in. And the kobolds were starting to pay attention in a detailed way to what was going on down below them. And they were starting to try and meddle. Like, hey, maybe we can get these guys to clear out that thing. Why don't we, sort of nudge them by the sounds we make and the things we leave and so on? Let's nudge them into going over there. Now let's nudge them into going over here. We don't want them getting any closer to our ways up, so let's just dissuade them with this. And so all of this stuff was happening all the time. And for me, that was the private fun for me of imagining what the dungeon was like as an ongoing community and what they were doing to it. And they may or may not have realized how much they were affecting it, depending on the party. Some did. Some didn't care. Some didn't notice. But I was having fun all the way through, imagining the ongoing life of the haunted halls. Because that was the fun of it for me, was, hey, these adventuring guys and gals sitting around the gaming table are building the history of this place. I'm watching it change in front of my eyes. And particularly if you grow up in a community or visit communities in real life that change from when you're a little kid, like buildings get torn down and new ones get put up, and you can watch that happen in front of your eyes, it then makes this fantasy thing seem more realistic because you see it happen in real life to places you know. It doesn't matter whether you want it to happen or not. It's going to happen. It does happen. It's life. And to watch it unfold in this fantasy setting, you would start to think, oh, yeah, this place feels real now, more real than it did. And for me, that was half the fun. And it was also the fun of seeing what people did when they went adventuring and the choices they made, the things they did. Because in that big sort of weird cross room near the back of the dungeon where they can run into all sorts of things, some of the groups started building, like trying to remove pillars so they could get better sight lines, trying to build up other stuff. They were starting to make the dungeon their own, like as a structure. Because they were saying, it would be safer if, why don't we, we wouldn't have to go around, and we certainly would never have to risk the green slime again if we open this way. So it was like, okay, I've bought this house, now let's fix it.
Right.
That's actually fun, to see the decisions they make, because that's something I never suggested. I just left for it to happen or not happen in game. And one of the great things from the beginning of the realms is I've always encouraged people to role play their Council of War sessions in character, so that as their characters, they sit around and discuss what they want to go do. Not the Dungeon Master opens the new module he just bought at the game store. We're running through this, fellas. Oh, great. Like I wanted Tomb of Annihilation right now. That never, ever happened, because what it was is the characters in-game as character, they sit around and say, well, we could make money by escorting that caravan. We'll charge them this much more this time. You know how dangerous it was last time. And then somebody says, yeah, but, I have investments in this other caravan. I want to protect that caravan, when it could mean the one I'm invested in gets clobbered the next week because, we shot our bolt on those guys. So they would actually sit around and discuss where they would go and what they would do. And that also, they felt it was much fairer, because it didn't feel like the DM is our adversary. He's railroading us through this adventure and he's trying to kill us off. Instead, it was, we decided where to go. We decided what to do. We gathered the intel beforehand, and the Dungeon Master led us. So if we screwed up, we screwed up. It's a different feeling.
Right. Real quick, Ed, did you ever play other than DM all those sessions, or were you always the DM?
Oh, no, I would always try and play from time to time. And as time went on, the chances to play got to be more and more, because TSR was quietly asking me to playtest certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to dredge up the wrong memories here, but, falling damage, or whether dwarven women have beards, all those things that they would come up with new rules and they would ask us to playtest them. And one of the things they were trying to do was playtest them with people who were not on staff, who did things differently, who played with different styles. So things that nobody would be hit with if it was on staff TSR guys, because nobody would make that stupid DMing decision, or no one would describe it wrongly. They wanted different groups to run across it and then have somebody do something, and they'd say, why did you do that? Well, that's the way you wrote it. Oh, oops. That's what the playtest was for, to catch things like that. So increasingly, I would get a chance to be a player when we were doing a playtest, because I'd say, okay, I've run it this way. Now let's see when somebody else is dungeon mastering. Let's see how they handle it. And I would sometimes tell them flat out, we're doing a playtest tonight. You guys get to be guinea pigs again. Smile for posterity. And other times I wouldn't tell them. And sometimes they'd guess. They'd get halfway through and says, is this another effing playtest? My character died for another playtest? You know how much this company owes me?
I hope you wouldn't kill their characters in a playtest.
No. But I mean, sometimes their own stupidity. I mean, their own actions. No. I was always trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. But there are times when people do stupid things. And I mean, that's why I consider dungeons like Tomb of Horrors to be patently unfair, because you have this thing where, you know, if you go through this hole, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's no warning beforehand. There's nothing that you can't. You're just gambling because you're never given enough information to make an informed decision. You're literally just gambling. I was never wanting to do that. I was trying to avoid it at all times. It should really come down to, do you learn to go the extra bit and peer at things like in the haunted halls? Oh, you found a foul-smelling toilet. Right, we turn away. Or do we look down the hole? Do we look under the seat? Because if we do, we're going to find something. And I don't mean we're going to find biological wastes. I mean, we're going to find something interesting to adventurers. So is that going to change our habits so that now every time we go to a toilet in Waterdeep, we try and pull the lid off and look underneath it?
First thing you do is you pull up the lid and put your head in the hole. What do I see?
Yeah. And then the dung sweepers are saying, oh, it's these weirdos again.
Hurry, you've got your Zoom hand up.
I do. Where it comes to your original group, Ed, the Knights are like rock stars. Everybody loves hearing stories about those guys. When reading through a lot of the introductory texts, it was mentioned about the Zhentarim influence of the surrounding areas, of the luring in of the monsters and the training of the different monsters that could be brought into the halls and the surrounding caves. Where the Zhentarim were concerned, were there any Zhentarim characters of note that people would be familiar with?
I don't think any of the ones from the home campaign really made it into most of the published things because they'd been killed already. I mean, in the home campaign, things had happened to them. But in the area of the haunted halls, with the exception of Whisper, who you were going to bump into if you kept on exploring, inevitably, down in the haunted halls. Everywhere else in the area, they were good spies, so they didn't get noticed, or they didn't get come to grips with. You might get the feeling you're being watched, or you might see some guy getting out of range in a hurry, and think that guy was watching us, and then you would maybe never know who he was watching you for. Because that's the thing. I was trying. These are low-level characters for the most part. They're learning to be adventurers. They're not automatically better than everybody else in the area. So the spies who are good at their business are good at their business and don't get caught, or don't get brought to grips with. If they get chased by the player characters, the player characters soon learn that they're inevitably going to be led into a trap, because the fact that these guys are spies means that they've thought about what happens if they get chased, and they've got something sort of prepared. It may not work, but and they would soon learn, yeah, it's not worth our while to run after them.
And are you postulating competent NPCs?
Yes. The NPCs were always more competent than the player characters. Used to frustrate the heck out of them. Yeah, that was half the fun. It was half the fun was like making people aware that you're not the big cheese. You're a very small bite of cheese in the grand scheme of things. You have to earn the big cheese status. by actually doing stuff that is big cheese status, not saying, well, we're the adventurers. The DM won't kill us yet.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The heck he won't.
We got another question from chat from a little while ago. Gareth Garfoot wants to know whether the crazed adventurers ever made it far enough east to reach the halls, or was it fresh when the knights got there?
The crazed adventurers never went into the halls. They did indeed get that far east, but they had other fish to fry by the time they were getting that far east. The company of Crazed Ventures, who really started in Undermountain and Dungeon of the Crypt, by then they were very character involved with NPCs all around them in the realms. So by the time that they were heading out east into this area, they had entanglements with all sorts of NPCs. They were going to see this guy about a trade matter. They were delivering this to this guy. They were investigating this other thing. And investigating the haunted halls just was, no, that's Cormier's problem. And they seem to have it well in hand. Whereas they did get involved in the Stonelands and trying to figure out what the Zhentarim were trying to do in the Stonelands behind the facade of all the stuff going along the regular caravan road. I mean, they'd already sussed out, okay, they're trying to do something here. But you see, the Zhentarim weren't telling everybody from the rooftops, we're trying to get rich by having the shortest, cheapest trade route. You had to sort of figure that out when you had dealing after dealing with them. Why would wizards do this? How does this help these wizards? And then you realize, oh, well, and you got to remember early editions of the game, wizards need more money than anybody else because they have to buy the ingredients for their spelling formulae.
Right.
They have to buy the stuff for their spell books. They have to buy all the ingredients to cast their spells. They have to spend money on experimentation and on tutoring and everything. So they have this constant need for money. So the Zhentarim were trying to get rich with a trade route so they could become mighty wizards, so they could do as they pleased, so they could then turn around and become even richer with the trade route. But they weren't telling everybody, we're trying to establish the shortest trade route, because if you tell the whole world that, then the whole world goes, man, I'm going to get in your way. So you don't forewarn the rest of the world. So it was taking the company of Crazed Ventures quite a while at this stage to figure out, why are these guys doing what these guys are doing? And that was their main focus. So they never got into exploring the haunted halls because it didn't seem to lead anywhere in terms of the Zent thing that they were investigating. It was all about what their choices were, what they were investigating in the world for them.
In the module, you have a small little reference to a spirit, a strange spirit you described it, named Rethreen. And you mentioned she's a DM device, knows a lot about the history of the halls and the Stonelands. Is there anything you can tell us about Rethreen that would be of interest?
Rethreen is a type of character. I'm trying to avoid giving away too much because there is still in fact play going on in the realms. But she's of a type of character, a local ghost, of which there are many around the realms of various specific sorts, various origins, and various aims, things they want to do in life. But it's another thing of, if the player characters can start treating this creepy undead like a person and just get along with them, they can learn a lot from them. And it's the cool thing of getting past your prejudices of, ooh, it's dead, hit it, kill it, ooh, into, like, she's dead, she can pass right through us, or, I'm talking to this babe and she's like really good looking. If only she didn't turn to bones right below her collarbones. So I could see all the dirt and the empty cavity. But I mean, you get over all that stuff, and then I can have a relationship with this person, a friendship, trust can develop, and we can find out interesting, cool things. And so you'll sort of say hi to the creepy when you pass them, and this makes the game more interesting. And for the player characters who take this route and take the time, they suddenly have a possible ally, possible story generator, like generate later adventures where Rathine comes to and, hey, there are these intruders doing this. And she can't do anything else. She can't compel you to do anything about it, but she can tell you about it. And if it's, oh, that's interesting, let's go see. And she may be actually helping you to eavesdrop on Zhentarim spies who are meeting in the area because she wants them out of here and she wants you to know they're here. She doesn't know what they are. She's not approaching closely enough or whatever, but it's something else for you to do. And it's just great fun. Whenever you can have an encounter in a game where you're talking to a floating skull or something, it's inherently more interested than blasting the talking skull to kingdom come in 5 seconds and then saying, I wonder why it was here. Well, too late now. That's the sort of thing that if you're going to consistently do that at my gaming table, it's going to cost you, not in terms of wounds or anything, but in terms of lost play opportunities. You would have found out something cool, but you were in such a hurry to destroy that thing that I guess you'll never know now, sort of thing. And my player characters were not stupid people. They picked up on stuff. And, we're playing face to face. They can hear my tone of voice. They can look at my expression. They can go, Ed's up to something, So the fact that we're playing face to face, they can start to think, I wonder if we just talk to this lady,
right?
And then you can really find out cool things about the back history of Cormyr that, say, perhaps the crown doesn't want you to know, or this noble family doesn't want to get out. But Rathine's a ghost from an earlier time and could tell you things that maybe you'd never find out for public consumption. And then these are burdens, they're secrets that you now know. And you have to decide, how secret do we keep this? Because if somebody knows we know this, are they going to start trying to make trouble for us? Particularly if it's the crown or this prominent noble family. Are we going to keep quiet what we know? But because we know it, we know never to turn our back on that noble family because, boy, they're creeps. If you get in their way, and now we know this, and that doesn't match their public persona at all, the image they cultivate. Which can then turn and lead to other adventures. And we were doing this sort of thing all the time. And that's the fun of having the detailed world. Why go to all the work of detailing the world if you're not going to use the world as this rich living thing around you that can spin up endless adventures? And because the world is offering the adventures, then it's the choices the player characters make of where to go and what to investigate that decides what the adventures turn out to be. And they feel good because they're choosing their destinies, those Council of War meetings in person, rather than the Dungeon Master ramming an adventure down their throat that he just bought at DM's Guild or wherever, and by damn, they're going to play it because he spent a lot of money on it. Instead, it's they get to be they get to decide their fates. They get to decide where to go adventuring, and they feel a lot better about it because, hey, we did that. We made that decision. We went there, and we only found this thing out because we talked to Rathine. If we hadn't talked to Rathine, nobody would ever have known about blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the delights of putting characters like that in.
Are there any I know you said your players are pretty crafty and clever and could catch the tone of your voice because apparently, you vary your voice when you're DMing. My style is to never change it at all. But to hide things, it's totally about hiding things.
Yeah, right.
Was there any secrets or hidden treasures or anything you remember off the top of your head that your players never did find that you can share?
Oh, yes, there are lots. Because here's the thing. There's the misfortune of not looking in the right place at the right time. But then there's also the opportunity cost. As I said earlier when we were talking about when the company Crazed Ventures came out east.
Mm-hmm.
If you're hunting other things, you will just never take the time to uncover this. And if you knew that there was a rich treasure there, and in the case of the company of Crazed Ventures in particular, one of the things I did that I was just having great fun personally as a DM was they found some spell books early on, and thereafter they had a pretty good run of finding scrolls. So I assigned one of the chosen, one of the 7 as it happened, to do the repopulate, as in put new spell books, put new scrolls everywhere they'd be. And eventually, by accident, they came across some of these, and then they started backtracking and looking for them. And of course, the sister who realized she'd been seen stopped leaving things right where, because the whole object for Mistra is to get the magic out widespread, not to personally benefit this one group of adventurers by handing them stuff over and over and over again. So when she realizes they're looking, she stops leaving stuff for a bit in those places. But they got to look at her from a distance very briefly as she's getting the heck out of Dodge. And they didn't know who she was at first. They didn't know who they'd seen. But silver-haired lady, very distinctive, good-looking silver-haired lady. We want to know more. Who is this silver-haired lady? And of course, they start asking questions of, people like Leo and Elminster. And people like Leo and Elminster immediately clam up and say, oh, you probably shouldn't be asking. And what? What is it you're not telling me? Oh, I don't think you're ready for that yet. What do you mean we're not ready for it yet? Oh, I think she should go away adventuring a bit more. After all, there's this quest and that quest and this undone thing, and then, then they did the, oh, you mean we're not worthy? Oh, I don't know. Are you worthy? Why don't you get on your knees to Mistra, and I'll leave you alone overnight, and you can just spend the night on your knees in the temple asking Mistra that yourself. It's not for me to say. You might want to have a closer relationship with Mistra, just as a general thing. You should have a closer relationship, and so they would pull that thing on them, and they decide whether or not they were going to spend their night on the knees in the temple. And then I would have them get dream visions that were very interesting and completely cryptic, and they go, well, what does that mean? Okay, back to Elminster or whoever to ask him, okay, I had this dream vision. It showed me this. What does that mean? Well, it could mean this. It could mean that. Have you brushed your teeth regularly? Because that, if you have, it probably means this. But on the other hand, it could mean that. And I was like those annoying guys in the Wizard of Oz movie. Well, you could go this way, or you could go that way. And eventually they got to, oh, he's leaving it up to us. Yeah, I'm leaving it up to you. You have to decide, and then you have to see what the reaction of the goddess is, or whatever your deity is, depending on which party member it is. And again, it was a story builder. We're then chasing these new, oh, hey, we're gonna do what? And let's go back and talk to that ghost. What else can she tell us about this? Because the obvious bonehead rock bottom thing is, oh, if she was here in the earlier times, maybe she can tell us where the treasure is, the treasure that she saw hidden back then. But I wanted to go so much beyond that into other things that they could learn from the ghost. And they were picking up on this and saying, this is so cool. We have a ghost in our back pockets and nobody else does. You know, we can get the skinny. We can find out interesting stuff. And then it made it a whole complete, does the ghost have a birthday? If we bring her a gift, will she like maybe tell us more? It's like, and then you pick your way through the minefield of, is the ghost going to be offended? Is the ghost thinking that you're trying to manipulate her? Is she going to get angry and tell you so? And then are you going to be falling all over yourselves, apologizing to a ghost? No, we didn't mean that. We were just trying to, you know, and then which is, you know, again, way more fun as a story thing. And it's way more memorable for your players. And they're trying desperately, oh, geez, yeah, now we got to stay in good with the ghost. Don't say that to the ghost. Oh, my goodness, you idiot. You said that to the ghost. Now, you know, now she's never going to dance with us again. You know, that sort of stuff. and all this stuff was unfolding. And the players are developing the story for you. And it's not only a way more fun as the DM, it's a way more effective story for them because they're so invested in it. Rather than you saying, spoon feed, spoon feed, spoon feed, railroad, spoon feed, which they can also feel and go, oh, that was nice. Yeah, I DM'd with Ed Greenwood. Yeah. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yay.
Yeah. Yay. Yeah.
We've all been there.
Now, you could easily do a 3rd to 7th level adventure where the PCs suddenly get summoned back to the halls because the ghost is being hunted by a bunch of overzealous clerics and she needs some help.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're walking the tightrope of, uh-oh, we want to help her, but if we help her, are the clerics going to think we're now bad guys? And are they going to spread the word that we're bad guys to the Wizards of War, to the local lord, to the Purple Dragons? You know, you realize what you've let these idiots do? And boy, are they getting uppity. And, you know, it's really dangerous in there and it's all their fault. You know, and it's like, but no, we're just trying to help our friend. Jeez, you know. But yeah, again, you're giving them, which is inherently, again, way more interesting. I mean, nobody wants to play in a gaming session that is consistently morally stickier and harder and more depressing than real life.
Yeah, true.
Because then it's not our escape from real life at all. But we sure appreciate it if on occasion what we're playing we can feel good about, and because it isn't easy, and because we're forced to make moral choices, and we think we made the right ones, we hope we made the right ones, they seem, well, on our heads be it. We had to make them.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. They get arrested in their sleep one night.
Just
Yeah.
the one?
Just the one night?
Just well. Well, they are adventurers. Come on. When do they sleep?
Yeah.
We have a question in chat. This might be a good time to share it. Can Ed expand on some lore regarding Charlora of Blackthorn, referenced in Volo's Guide to Cormyr, and her manor to the west of Eveningstar?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I can't. No, and the reason I can't is that is firmly NDA'd. I think it was an outside licensed computer game that I think never flew. But the NDA has never been lifted.
If it was Commodore 64, you can go ahead and say it.
If only NDAs didn't endorse.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it hasn't been lifted, you know, we could have this conversation, and then next month something could come out. I mean, I know it seems very far-fetched, but I I imagine everybody here at the table remembers the Gen Con where Bruce Hurd was trying to get permission to do Mystara, and suddenly an old console game of Mystara was re-released like a month later. And now whatever the reasons that happened for, that could happen at any time. I mean, the NDAs are still there for a reason in some cases. So I can't really share much about that. I ran into that NDA much earlier when I was writing Spellstorm. Because remember, Spellstorm takes place roughly in that area. And at a mansion, an isolated mansion. And it was like, oh yeah, like, oh damn, I can't. That NDA is still there.
Well, that's not what NDA means, right? So NDA means that you can't share it. It doesn't mean that you can't write about it.
Well,
you can't share it outside the company.
Yeah.
You could always put it in something that you've been contracted to write and let them cut it out.
Yeah, that's assuming that's
their job. That's not your job.
Oh boy. Yes. Well, yeah. If you ever wanted to work again, no.
No, exactly. No. But NDA, you've held up your end. You haven't shared with anybody that's not authorized.
Yeah.
But since we can't answer that question though, I had a question for you, Ed. One of my favorite parts of the Haunted Halls module is Riviera's Keep. Because it creates, first of all, I love the lore surrounding it and its attachment to Esperin and the history involved and all that stuff. But also it seems like it's there to serve lots of different purposes all at once. And the fact that I'm sure that there was a chunk of the module chopped out because you couldn't expand on it, like you couldn't go into the dwarven traps or anything like that. It's a blessing in disguise because it increases the versatility, right? It could be a death trap, it could be a future base of operations,
right?
But my question to you is, did you have an intention for that location when you wrote it, or was it meant to be that versatile?
Yeah, it was meant to be that versatile, but it was also supposed to be a location that certain bandit groups in the area knew well, as in they had potential plans for it in the future. And at the time that the original Swords of Eveningstar adventuring band, the guys who became the Knights of Mithranor, were exploring the haunted halls, one of those bandit lords was falling into the hands of the local Zhentarim and getting tortured, interrogated, questioned. And the Zents were finding out some of the layout of Riviera's Keep, thinking, hey, we could make use of this in certain ways. So that was happening, and it was going to be a question of whether the party members ignored that and left it to the Zents to develop, or whether it became a sort of gold rush race to control Riviera's Keep. So the second person in was going to get sniped at by the people who'd already grabbed it for themselves. And that was again left open because it was up to what happened. And in the Home Realms campaign, things took a different turn. They weren't interested because they didn't want to be tied down in this area. They weren't planning on making it their stronghold and living here. They just wanted to adventure in it, clear it out, move on to bigger and better things. As in, they actually had their minds on, and it didn't work out this way. They had their minds on getting in good with important noble families at court in Cormyr, and getting a far higher profile and, becoming trusted escorts for coaches and so on, so that you could go to a hunting lodge without any worry that ruffians would stop you on the road and take the jewels from around the throats of the fair ladies, because the adventuring band would be riding alongside them, and those brigands would not dare come within a county of the, that sort of stuff. And they were hoping for cushy jobs like that. And then taking little vacations, and during the little vacations, they'd go adventuring somewhere and get rich. And then they go back to this fun, regular job and then get rich again. And I was actually picturing it the way, when I was a little kid, the big sport in Canada was not football or baseball, it was hockey. But in those days, hockey players were paid so little that they all had day jobs. And there are many, many stories of when I was a little kid of a hockey player being late for a game, showing up for the second period or the third period because the streetcar broke down, or he had to stay late at work because he was the only guy running the hardware store. So it wasn't like, oh, they're incredibly highly paid athletes, who this is their only job. And if they want to run a restaurant or a sporting goods store on the side, that's their lookout. It's an investment, but they're paid well enough. No, these guys, they all had day jobs. And the same thing. You want a feeling that you have to do this. You're part of the community. It's your day job. And the adventuring is the plum stuff. So then let's go away adventuring. Come on, don't waste any time. And it becomes like real life. Can you get this weekend off? No, I can't get this weekend off. Darn, when are we ever going to get up to the cottage to play poker together or whatever? Well, substitute for that. When are we ever going to get to go and plunder the haunted halls again? Because money's running low. And being home with the squalling wife and kids, no. I need to go adventuring again, guys. I need to feel the wind in my hair. I need to, and literally, I was putting that into the, because it makes your players do crazier things when they feel that sort of pressure, and they do reckless, silly things that they shouldn't, and it's ever so much more fun.
Eric, you bugging out?
No, that was Steven saying that.
Oh, was that Steven? Oh, sorry. Wrong one. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I am fading a little bit, but yes, I'm still here.
Come on.
Yeah, keep going, guys. I'm doing this on 3 hours sleep, so keep going.
Hey, I have to work at 7:45 in the morning, so.
Work?
Yeah.
Work?
What
is this work you speak of?
This work thing, yeah. I wish I didn't have to.
Gotta pay his keep.
That's right. I got a room to build. What are you talking about?
Like I said, you gotta pay your keep.
I gotta pay my keep. That's true.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. It needs a moat. Your keep needs a moat.
I would love to do that. I think Sharon would probably kill me.
Well, after the third alligator ate the third client, maybe.
Florida man found face down in his moat.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it would fit the theme of Florida. That's true.
So moat it be.
Oh.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah. I have another Realms Lore question for you, Ed.
Oh dear. I mean, yes.
This one's obscure. Trust me. So,
thank you.
But I'll give you enough context to try to remember. But no worries if you didn't. So George and I have been having a play around the interaction between Netheril and Cormanthier. In fact, we just put something up on the DM's Guild about the 9 Jewels of Neverwinter, which may not sound like it has anything to do with Netheril or Mistranner, but it did. But it also has a lot to do with Manchun, which makes it even stranger. But the question I had is, in the haunted halls, this is an example of you dropping a little tidbit. And I could have used this name, but I didn't notice it in advance. You say 2 books are diaries of someone named Palanthar, who evidently worked magic and traveled between Netheril and Mistranner. Palanthar's ink has faded and mold has attacked the pages of his cheap travel tomes. The diaries are very hard to read, but may, at the DM's option, provide clues or directions leading to treasures and adventures, perhaps in the Stonelands. So the first question is obviously, who is Palanthar? And the second one is, exactly which period are we talking about? Because obviously Netheril fell before we started Mithranor, so it could have been like a Netherese survivor state in Mithranor, or it could have been Mithranor when it was called Cormanthor, and Netheril was at its height. So I guess, when is it and who is it? That's my question.
Okay, Cormanthor is okay, and that's number one. Number two, that guy was one of those very, very self-sufficient, independent wizards who could be independent back then, because you don't have a centralized authority and magically powerful regime that has the reach that the current one does. And there is an adventure that I run fairly often these days at conventions called The Mystery of the Unicorn Chamber, where the player characters, the Baron's Blades, of course, who are once a year they take the Baron, they serve the Baron of Hawkhill and Alm, and once a year they take his wool caravan, they escort it safely to Cizale, and then they have about a 5-day furlough. Well, the people who were the servants on the caravan run frantically around Cizale, buying all the things on the Baron's household's shopping list. And that's going to be what's in the return journey of the caravan back to Hawkhill that they're going to have to guard again. But until then, they're on furlough. And one of the things they run into is a delicate problem where some high muckety-muck nobles were meeting together, and it's a sort of Montague Capulet type situation, and one of them has obviously been murdered because his headless body is still there, and the other one is missing. And they would like somebody who's an outsider from Cormyr to solve this problem, as in find out who did what to whom, get back the missing guy if possible, in a hurry, before these two noble families discover what's happened and World War III starts. I mean, a civil war starts inside the, so that's the thingy. And they will be met by a court envoy by the name of Polarian. And Polarian is a dandy. And Polarian is the descendant of this guy. All these years later. And yeah, I had great fun with that because the family line has been very well placed because they know the right things, but they're not thrustingly ambitious. They are the dependable, loyal courtier whom the crowned head can depend on. If you're doing the biblical story where, the Moses is being shoved into a basket amongst the reeds or something like that, they're the hands that shove the basket in the reeds, that sort of thing. That's their role in passing history. They're always there. They're always reliable. They always help. They're always loyal. And as a result, he gets this plum job. And he knows things. Like he knows lots of things about the royal family of Cormyr and about almost all the senior noble families. He knows where the skeletons are buried. He knows closets that other people don't know about where the skeletons are. Which means if the player characters ever figure this out and start asking him questions, he is an idea generator for years to come, an adventure generator. Because he can just let drop this and that, and oh my goodness, oh, so that's never been found. Oh, and there's still a reward. Oh, so you can just like go on spinning things, and if at one of these, usually what happens at most of these charity games at a convention is time runs out and they're still in the dungeon. Because they're having so much fun checking every inch of wall for secret door and stuff like that. And I'm just scratching my head saying, what is this mania for secret doors? They're not, come on, chase the guy. Come on. But
previous DM trauma is what it is.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But if
I can hear you, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Damn.
Yeah, but if they ever take the time or have the time and get into a conversation with this guy, it'll be like, wait, we should have started the adventure doing this. This is gold, And so yeah, that's what that guy is, and he lived a blameless life, so to speak, as in he didn't do many big important things that history remembers, because he wasn't a megalomaniac. And to put things in good old Anglo-Saxon terms, he wasn't a dick. He was wanting to learn more magic for himself and perfect more magic, not plunder this, conquer that, rule this. That held no interest for him whatsoever.
Oh, wow. Curry, you had a question. You ever so politely raising your hand.
That was very cool, though.
No, that was very cool.
Thank you, Ed. Go ahead, Curry. Sorry.
So I wanted your permission, Ed, if I could out you a little bit on something that I've noticed about one of your tells I've picked up on.
Yes.
If you want me to ruin this for you, I'll be happy to do it, but otherwise I'll keep my mouth shut.
No, go right ahead.
Okay.
I have no secrets.
I love playing cards, and I'd always rather prefer play the player rather than play the cards. And I pay into people's mannerisms. Like with Eric, you get nothing. You get 0. He's not going to tell you anything by the describe to you. But with Ed, there's a very distinct move, and I'm going to show you guys this move. So pay attention. Whether he's running a game, whether he is telling a story, or even during some of the narration projects we've done, Ed has this move. Now, this may be to your benefit. This may be to your detriment. It can go either way, but he uses it the same way. I got to take off my glasses here.
The Greenwood maneuver.
So regardless of what Ed may be trying to describe, the move is this. The head gets cocked to one side. He does the half Spock eye. He almost points like this. So that candle over there on the wall that's crooked, that quill that's on the desk where the scribe was sitting, that move right there where Ed does the half Spock eye and points with that lean eye, and he wants you to pay special attention to whether it's going to be bad or good. Ed Greenwood is deliberately subtle.
Yep.
Well, Eric does have a tell.
Pay attention. That will come up in the future.
Eric does have a tell.
Oh, he does? I got to hear about Eric's tell.
Eric's tell.
I want to hear this too.
Eric's tell is because when something lore heavy is coming up, his nostrils pick up because the way his computer is. Then I can see straight up his nose on the, oh crap, what's going to happen?
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
I'm telling the truth.
I believe you. I was listening to Curry's story, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, so not only does Ed have multiple NPC voices, he also has movement and isn't like locked in place.
It's like 4D. It's like a 4D
can twist
ride.
his head all the way around, you know?
Pretty soon he'll get up and start doing a dance interpretively in front of the camera.
Oh, interpretive dance. Yeah, I'm not good in heels anymore.
You can still wear the fishnet stockings.
Because these are not skills that I particularly have, of like head turning, voices.
Oh,
Eric,
how do we know that?
We still love you. Oh, Eric is funny. He's like, Lord so-and-so. Hi, this is Lord so-and-so. And his wife. Hi, I'm Lord so-and-so's wife.
Lord so-and-so's wife.
Oh, dear.
Oh, but we love it, Eric.
It's a role-playing game. We're supposed to be ham acting.
Eric's very good at role playing. He tells us to roll for initiative practically every 5 minutes. So.
I know. I love it. I love it.
Oh, he has to know which one of you has to make the saving throw first.
No, it's like we come in and sit down. Okay, we're ready to start playing. We're ready to start playing. Roll initiative.
I have told this story before, but since we're going to talk about haunted halls, I do have to tell that I have gotten very mellow in my old age, because when I was DMing for the haunted halls, my players kind of called me the one hit point DM, which may sound like a weird thing, but every encounter ended with either 1 hit point left or none, and 1 hit point for the party collectively versus none, meaning no one had any left. And so the party had the infamous mule. And so when we had one of those 0 hit point encounters, the mule would drag all the bodies back to the temple, would grab the coin pouch in its mouth and drop it over to the Temple of Lathander. And, they would wake up once again in the Temple of Lathander going, yup, it was another 0 hit point adventure. The other thing that I did actually add like a tiny bit of excitement to the campaign was every time they returned to the Lonesome Tankard, without fail, they would walk into the Lonesome Tankard, all the locals would look up at them, some would get this disappointed look, some would get a very pleased look, and then everybody would reach for their coin purses and start handing coins to other people.
Yeah,
that was a key piece of entering in Lonesome Tankard, is the bets were paid off, whether they'd be back or not.
Yes, I did that in Waterdeep.
No, Eric is a great DM. I love it. I love playing his
I don't know about that.
You are. You
All
are.
right.
You know why?
So what else can we talk about?
It's steeped in lore. That's why.
So are there any sites, Ed, that you did not mention, even in passing, in the Haunted Halls adventure that are within spitting distance of the Lonesome Tankard that we should know about?
You mean in town, or?
Well, not necessarily in town, just over the ridge to the west. Here's the name of a dungeon. That's all I meant. Was because I went everywhere with all the ones that you did drop in there, like the Cavern of Claws and the Whisper's Crypt and Riviera's Keep and all those others. Are there any other little ones around, micro dungeons we should know about?
Yeah, but all of my micro dungeons were deeper into the Stonelands. Like you had to go up the gorge to the end of it, and then you started working your way through the ravines, getting higher and higher, and all the ravines are going east to west. So it's a series of knife-edge ridges, and then you go down into the bottom of the ravine where there's a trickling stream, and then you clamber up the far side of it through amongst all the trees, and then over another knife-edge ridge. And so I mean, travel north-south is not easy, and it's impossible for an army unit or mounts and beasts of burden. It's a climbing expedition for everybody. And deeper into the Stonelands, there are the remnants of various people's very simple abodes, and the occasional dwarven tomb, single tomb, like somebody buried their friend, sort of thing. And some of them have treasure, and some of them have been found and repurposed by the Zents. And so there's a lot of them, but they were they were sort of like 3 hours of play, small holds, rather than dungeons,
So was when you're talking about this, you just triggered a memory. Dungeon 18, you had an adventure published called Iron Guard.
Yep.
Which you described as just north of the Kingdom of Cormyr, somewhere in the Stonelands. So is that an example of one that would have been just outside of Eveningstar to the north?
Yep. That's one of them. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I almost forgot about that adventure until you started talking, and then remembered it off the top of my head.
Yes, the Iron Guard. Where you can first, come across all these cool spells and stuff you can use elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah. I was
It had
always
flying daggers, the Curse of Forgetfulness. I'm quick skimming it here. Lots of cool stuff. And it was literally just a 5-room dungeon.
Yes, yeah. I did lots of little mini dungeons like that because it's like, what would be realistic for somebody digging out a burial place that is just a burial place, as opposed to an underground community where people are trying to live? And it would not be all that elaborate. You know, we're not going Pharaoh with trying to exalt himself, get to the heavens and killing any number of slaves to build it. We're not in that sort of territory. We're into practical, let's build something modest, quick, that we can use in time to come for our family, sort of thing. And that's what they'd get. You know, and it would have to sort of, in my mind, it would have to, quote, be realistic as opposed to far-fetched.
Yep. Very cool.
Is this the part, Jeff, where you're going to ask Ed about his other little dungeon adventure about Elminster's, the classically titled Elminster's Back Door?
I think it's a good place to put it in.
Yeah. Elminster has seen that proctologist and would like a second opinion. Yeah, no. No. That was I was asked to do a real quickie dungeon, and I had always had this back way into Elminster's Tower, and I thought, okay, I'll share it with them. This will be fun. So I called it Elminster's Back Door. And then the hilarity began. I had no idea you had such filthy minds.
Yeah, right. Come on.
Well, you know, when I regained consciousness, no.
There was a question earlier about if there was parts in there that you would. I think part of it was to expand further upon. Let's see here. Glad to see the pocket. Is there a specific aspect or part that you would like to expand further upon, be it lore or gameplay related to the haunted halls?
There is one part that had to be completely cut out, and that was uses of the haunted halls by groups in Cormier who weren't necessarily sinister. That were recent, as in before the Zhentarim, but after Riviera. And these included bored nobles who started their own sort of Hellfire Club type equivalent. And this was their meeting place where they, get together and have fun. And for obvious reasons, that was going to be cut from the published halls even before we came to the space limitations that caused the pruning, because going down to the 32 pages, there's no way with code of conduct and subject matter that even the idea of the nobles having a haunted hall, Hellfire Club equivalent, because even if I say it's a Hellfire Club, I'm not going to explain anything more. Go look it up, in your Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever. It's still going to be, no, that's not something we want in print. And I basically wanted it just left up to the dungeon master as to what exactly they'd been doing, because some nobles would probably be there just for drunken debauchery, but other nobles would probably be there because they had sort of treasonous thoughts and needed a good place to get together and scheme about them without getting caught. and that this would therefore mean that anybody else, like the player characters, who started investigating this area later on, would immediately attract the suspicion of the war wizards and local lords and purple dragons, because, oh, so are these traitors to the crown, like the last group that we rousted out of here? And of course, the player characters may not even know any of this, and they may be totally unwittingly, it's sort of like the old cultural joke about, oh, if you looked up the wrong thing online, I'm sure you're now on a FBI watch list, because you looked up, something that is inherently suspicious even of itself. Well, in the same way, this could be guilt by association when you really know nothing about the past history of this, and large part because of space limitations, but also because of the subject matter. That just got torpedoed immediately. Yeah.
So what would make the Haunted Hall such a great place to meet for these groups?
Well, you can't get lost even in the moonlight. Okay? If you're coming to the place, and you can get off the road and lead your horse or tether your horses, hobble your horses, and then walk and then avoid the main built-up area and just walk up the gorge and not get lost. So although it can be a remote area, it can be easily found. And you can therefore easily meet there without having to meet someone, say, in the Lonesome Tankard and say, "Hi, you don't know me, stranger." Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And everybody in the place knows that these people do know each other. You don't have to do any of that. You can just show up at the right place at the right time, because you can't get lost, which makes it very handy that way. And it's been there forever. And it's like the local farmers go up the gorge part way, and then they use these sort of sheep tracks, pony tracks, mule tracks to get up to their fields on the plateau on either side. So there are reasons to go there, and legitimate reasons, I mean. And there are people who go up prospecting into the Stonelands, and there are people who go from the temple gathering wild herbs and so on. So there are legitimate reasons to go there. So it isn't automatically that somebody seen going north in the gorge has to be a brigand or bad guy. No, they could be there for a perfectly innocent reason. And of course, if you are gathering for treasonous purposes, you're almost certainly going to give yourself a cover story. Oh, we were mushroom picking,
right,
sir? And if you're smart, you're going to send people ahead of time with bags of mushrooms and hand them to the guys. So, okay, if you get stopped, show them these bag of mushrooms and say, "We were mushroom picking, sir." And you show them this huge bag of mushrooms. Well, they've obviously been mushroom picking, because they couldn't have found that many in no time at all. So, unless somebody knows that it's a plant and prepared beforehand, they think, okay, maybe they were mushroom picking. Okay, got to give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll keep an eye on them, but they may be legit, So there's and that whole thing had to go for space reasons and content reasons.
That's a shame.
Well, you see, I was only writing the original Realm stuff for me, not for a wider audience. I wasn't going to misinterpret what I wrote. I wasn't going to offend anybody called myself by what I wrote. It's different when you're writing for a wider audience.
Right.
You have to think about things. And there were things that absolutely caught me off guard, that were different cultural things. From Canada and the United States when I was publishing. And also era, how old people were. For instance, my wife Jenny really upset her two daughters when they were very young teenagers by calling them sluts.
What?
Because to someone in North America, that has a sexual connotation, and it does now in Britain. But in Jenny's era and her earlier wartime, that meant somebody who was a slob. We would use the word slob. The feminine version was slattern, somebody who didn't clean up their room.
Mm-hmm.
It had nothing to do with sex, at least in Jenny's
Right.
neck of the woods, or So she was astonished that her daughters were offended, because she would say, "What you are? Look at your rooms. You're clearly sluts."
Clearly sluts.
And her daughters are going, "Mom," but I ran into the occasional culture thing there that was different. I would say something, and Jeff Grubb would say, "You can't say that." I'd say, "Why not? I just did." No, we can't say that. Well, why not? What's wrong with Americans? And of course the answer is they're Americans.
They're American. That should do it.
they use the language and they think of things slightly differently than you're used to. So we're going to have to change it because they are the audience. Oh, okay. Fair enough. That's why you have editors. That's why they're in charge. Because if you let me just write my stuff, there are going to be some things that are totally misinterpreted, and I'm going to be going, what? What? Because I use the same words to mean something slightly different. It isn't always dirty stuff. It could be anything. That's how we always used to check how well edited a product was. How many misunderstandings could you have at the gaming table? Innocent misunderstandings, just because something wasn't written clearly enough. How many arguments over my character would have seen that trap. I shouldn't be dead. Because of the way the Dungeon Master described it.
Right.
Because of the way it was written down in published module. So, you're always thinking about things like that you might not think of when it's your own home campaign and you're the Dungeon Master and you're facing the same friends you face across the gaming table every weekend. They know what you mean. They know your, just what Curry was just talking about, the tells.
Mm-hmm.
You pick up on those by knowing someone. It's not always easy to pick up on tells when you don't know somebody. You're not familiar with them yet.
See, my tells aren't subtle. They're pretty obvious. Curry can tell you. If I have something hidden, they say I'm going to do that. I'm like, really? Just, oh my god.
We always invite Jeff for poker.
That's right. You do.
Yes, like that scene in 2010. Have you checked the orbit? Not subtle at all.
No, not subtle at all. George?
Yes?
All right, let's go, man.
Do you want me not to be subtle? Okay.
No, don't be subtle. No.
I thought I already did that with Elminster's back door, but we require more.
Well, apparently his back door.
More. Yes.
His back door is off limits now. So.
What I was going to ask about was my last little question about haunted halls anecdotes, and that is in one of your blurbs. I think it was actually in the Dragon article that featured Eveningstar, because it got chopped out of the Forgotten Realms Adventures. And I'm guessing this was one of your library campaigns as well, but you talked about a circle of levitating, fireball hurling Zhentarim wizards that the Company of the Unicorn fought there.
Yes.
And I thought that sounded pretty over the top and stupendous. So I don't know if there's anything you could tell us about that.
That was an in-campaign battle in which the Zents had this. It was just like a football team, and by football team I mean American football, where they stop in between each play, and then and huddle and plan things and then start again. It was a football play type thing where the Zents had worked out this tactic that they would use if they found themselves in against a particularly hard opponent, and somebody in the group sort of said the code word again, like a football quarterback going 43 steamboat or whatever, and that means something in terms of a play. Well, they had this pre-prepared play, which was that, the levitating fireball hurlers that they used against the player characters, and it was devastating.
I bet.
And what they had done was set things up so that the player characters were calling in reinforcements, as in they found something, they told the local lord. Tesseril sent a whole bunch of purple dragons. This was going to be the chance to take care of the problem in the haunted halls, and I didn't want their glory to be taken away by all these purple dragons. I wanted them to have the fight, and I also didn't want them to, in effect, cheat, as in get this all taken care of by superior manpower, by calling in the authorities. So when all the purple dragons showed up, in this huge military force, the Zents said, oh, we're in over our heads. It's time to, execute Operation Fireball or whatever. And they did this, and they just sort of, the players invite the War Wizards and Purple Dragons in. The Purple Dragons and War Wizards ride up the gorge grandly to scour out the halls, and the Zents wipe them out. Right there, just like that. And it's right back to just the player characters. Wow. And then the Zents smile at the player characters and say, "Care for a little fire, Scarecrow?" And we're off. And
I hope they didn't kill the mule.
No,
somebody's going to take him back.
That's right. Yes, mules had similar heroic roles in the Home Realms campaign. They looked after Bill the pony,
Oh no! Whoa!
Yeah.
Not Bill the pony. Seriously?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because we had some guys who, the Lord of the Rings spoke to them every night, and they would say Bill the pony, and I'd say, "You're not calling the pony Bill," and they'd say, "Yeah, I am," and I'm saying, "Bill's going to have a short life and a not so merry one, Dungeon Master warning you," and they'd say, "What? Are you railroading?" And I'd say, "No."
See, I went the other way, Ed. So in my current campaigns that I'm running, one of them I call the kids campaign, for my son and nephews and their friends, and they named their pony Bill. And instead of killing him off, they then started the cult of Bill and started telling everybody that he needed to be worshipped. He's now like one of the servitors of Uthgar.
Yeah.
He flies around. He's got wings. He's kind of like a Pegasus, but bright red and a pony.
My Little Pony. Oh, sorry.
Exactly.
We don't have anything like that. It's pretty much we fight somebody, then we drag George's corpse with us to the next battle, because he, doesn't make it.
Yeah, I recall a recent design assignment. There were people inside Wizards who were invited to do their own My Little Pony things, modify them, because Hasbro owns My Little Pony, and they did. And I had an idea, and for utilizing a My Little Pony in a, how shall we put it, adventuring way, and I was told very stiffly that wouldn't be appropriate, that was using the brand for horror purposes.
What?
Yes. And
Did they not watch their own cartoon?
Yeah, obviously not. Obviously not.
Because I've got kids and I have watched their cartoon, and oh my god.
Yes. That I agree wholeheartedly. And I was like, wait a minute. I can't do it, but you can do it? Is that what this is?
Yes. Yes.
Anyway. Yes, well, and that's the first skim the surface of the haunted halls.
Yes, that's wonderful. We are going to call it at 11, Ed. I think.
Okay.
So I think we're losing Eric.
When I
Eric's
turn
fading.
into a pumpkin?
Well, not you, but Eric's kind of fading there, and I got to work tomorrow too. So.
Yeah, me too.
We don't want to keep you up too late.
And I'm going to have some lunch. Oh.
Lunch! I love lunch.
That's right. You're in the future. Tell us about the future,
Yes.
George.
It's a nice sunny day. It's lovely. No alien invasions. You'll be right.
Okay, sweet. That's all I have to hear.
Is there cake in the future? That's all I want to know. Is there cake?
Cake, cookies, alcohol, all the good stuff.
Oh! And that's why we adventure, boys and girls, so we can have cake, cookies, alcohol, and other things in the future.
Yeah,
that's right.
I was going to say biscuits, but you guys would have then thought of other things.
I know what biscuits are.
Yeah.
Biscuits hold together all your furniture.
That's right.
Tim Tam and Vegemite.
If I'm in Texas, biscuits and gravy. If I'm around George, it's cookies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, to that point, George,
yes.
There's a very valid question in chat here. Really quick, what are the winning lottery numbers today so we can buy the ticket?
I'm not sure how you're going to manage to buy an Australian lottery ticket, so that doesn't quite work.
Hey, I know people that live there.
Yeah, I know people too.
No, Jeff, they're really unreliable.
I think we're heading into temporal anomaly territory now.
That's right, because aren't the Australians equivalent to drow?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
we live down under.
They live down under. That's right. That's right.
Dritz has an Australian accent.
Dear.
It's just like dwarves are Scottish.
Yeah.
Here we go.
He says, "Hurry up, Bruno, we've got to piss off out of here."
You know it's wrap-up time when dwarves go Scottish.
That's right. Hey, look what you're doing, lad. Come on now.
Oh God.
No.
Oh, we've got that tomorrow. What joy.
That's right, you do.
Did somebody new just join the chat? Because I didn't recognize that voice.
That's right. Well, Eric, you see, when I've taken voiceover lessons, so I know how to change the timbre and the pace of my voice. So
my phone doesn't have that feature.
We'll do that for you.
No. I just want to hear more good Scottish accents rather than.
Hey.
Oh, there you go.
Oh man.
It's coming out now.
Ed, I cut. Do I not bleed?
No. It always sounds the same. I never hear accents from elsewhere. Like, I bring news from a lair. I never hear any of that.
Because I can't do that.
I ache to hear that. I ache to hear the lilting tones. That say, "Oh, Jeff's wearing his kilt. His comely locks are blowing in the breeze." I am,
I'm doing my handstands.
Okay, right, and we should probably wrap it there. Well,
I see you gentlemen snuck some lore into this new 9 Jewels release that we hadn't previously revealed.
Yes.
He didn't sneak anything. He just made crap up.
He just made it
anyway.
up. Yeah, Eric.
I did not make anything up. It was all implied by existing realms lore.
I'm talking about Ekamain Truesilver.
No, implied. You know what that means, right?
No,
Bottle
it
of
wasn't
scotch.
implied. I stated it directly in the royal lineage, and now it's here.
It's there.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
That deserves
Yeah.
There you go.
Just trying to keep it consistent, but I could never remember what I got from where.
No,
but yes, there are
I'm happy. I love
lots of secrets about Ekamain.
That's right. That's a skin condition, isn't it?
We need to publish the lineage at the DM's Guild.
Yes.
In full glory at some
Brian could publish it tomorrow.
He could.
I'm actually in the middle of a rewrite.
Put it this way: we want to see the correct.
I'm trying to unify voice.
We want to see the correct lineage, not what's been published before.
Are you starting from undeath and working your way down, or
yeah,
full rewrite? Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the lore is staying the same. It's just making sure the voice seems consistent and adding in, we had created some new folks to justify a throwaway line in a novel that someone had written, claiming that they were the 12th in line to the throne of Cormyr when we only had 3 legitimate heirs to the throne of Cormyr.
That happens.
Oh, come on. Kings spread their seed more than...
We added some more.
Oh, sounds good.
They're gonna make it in.
Nice.
Cool. That sounds exciting.
All right, that's good.
Well, let's all make sure we check out Eric's jewels.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll be here all week. Tip your waitresses.
I'm going to do
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the definition of shameless plug.
Tip the veal and try your waitress.
Try the veal.
Oh,
okay, awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody for showing up here. I really appreciate it. And George, it's a wonderful idea. You seem to have so many of them lately. You should come up with some more. We could do shows on them. I like it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
It's just that Eric steals most of the good ones, so
I know, but you know, there are some
you know.
people that are fame hogs, but you know,
That's Australian code for Eric publishes most of the good ones.
That's right. That's right.
It's all connected. It's all connected.
It looks like some folks were trying to share the links for the 9 Jewels of Neverwinter in the chat, so I'm going to add that in.
Oh,
so
good.
People can access it.
Yay! There you go. I already bought it.
There was an awesome article about Saints of Damara and Impulse. Oh, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
Oh, there was, wasn't there? Let's see if I can find that real quick.
No, I'm kidding.
You kidding? Ed, I still want you to send me your merchants map so we can do that merchants game.
Yes.
No, that would be cool.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. In my spare time.
No, I will take care of that in 2 months.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
Dig it all up, Jeff. Dig it all
I'm
up.
going to go in there with a shovel. Are you kidding?
Yeah, we're packing shovels, pitchforks, all that.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
We are. Actually, I'm just going to rent a U-Haul and I'm just going to throw everything inside of it and go back to America after that. So.
Thanks, Ed. Bye.
I got a 3-car garage and I'm just going to sort everything in there. How's that?
Wow. And Jeff was never seen again.
Right, yeah, effectively.
Florida man found killed under pile of lore from Forgotten Realms. Ed just says, "I told him so."
Wife, for some reason, can't stop laughing.
I can't think of a better way to go.
He'll be missed somewhat.
Those book stacks could be booby trapped.
They
Yes.
could be booby trapped. Yes, my wife would just shut the door and lock it and never go in that room again. You think I'm kidding? She said if I ever die in my sleep, she's locking the bedroom door and living in the rest of the house.
Suddenly,
Jeff
How very
disappears.
Hitchcockian of her. But anyway.
Well, anyway, thanks, guys. Say bye to the good people.
Really good to see everybody tonight.
It really
Yeah.
is. Say goodbye to the
Thank
people
you,
in
everyone.
Twitchland first. Say goodbye to the people
Good
in
night.
Twitchland. Thanks
Night,
for joining
Twitch.
us, guys, and hopefully we're going to be doing this a lot sooner than we have in the past. So please look out for new shows. Hopefully George will be able to come up with something that we can, do without taking too long. Because, we all rely on George to do all this for us. So